some time off. It's the movie discussion pocket dimension where what happens? All right, time does not exist, and the only thing that matters is film. I'm Cole, and that's Jay. Things look a little different. We haven't 100% decided that this is the format going forward, but at least for tonight, we're going with StreamYard, as you can see by the obnoxious logo there. So we're still maybe trying out some other options, although there probably aren't as many as we would like. But this does have some good things going for it. I like the split screen, for instance. That's kind of cool. And some other stuff.
You like that?
Yeah. Get all the ads in there.
You're on the yard.
Let's go to their site and buy some of their swag. We can wear big hats that say it and everything, I'm sure. Oh man. I guess I would if they gave us money for the show to be sponsored. But anyway, I don't know. So maybe this is what we'll be going forward with. I don't know. We'll see. But for tonight, at least, it's going to work. And we return, kind of going back to our second ever episode was by this director, Gus Van Sant.
It's our third Gus Van Sant film.
Is it? What was the other one we did? Because our second episode was Drugstore Cowboy, which
we did My Own Private Idaho, didn't we?
Oh, we did. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so what's funny is we're going to sort of jump over his more mainstream period, because Gus Van Sant was kind of an indie type guy doing sort of art house type movies. And then in like the mid to late 90s, he did some more mainstream stuff. And obviously the movie that was most successful, he's most known for, I guess, is Good Will Hunting in 1997, which is a movie he did not write, supposedly written by Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. People think, mostly Matt Damon. That's what most people seem to think. But anyway, the thing about Van Sant is he does write a lot of his movies too. So now we're coming around back when you get to the early 2000s. He goes back to sort of his roots, doing more sort of indie type movies, art house type movies. And this movie is the second in what is sometimes called his death trilogy. We always I've talked a few times about how much I really like thematic trilogies, and not something we've really gotten to discuss in too much detail here. The other movies, and they were all done in a row without not any other movies interrupting them. The first movie, I think, was Jerry, the weird desert roaming movie with Matt Damon and Casey Affleck, which was inspired by true events about two guys getting lost in the desert. This movie, of course, is Elephant, which is also inspired by true events. The Columbine school shootings in 1999, which has since been surpassed as like the deadliest school shooting, but still probably remains the most famous, especially because of its influence. There's probably been school shootings since then that were directly kind of...
Oh, has it been surpassed? I didn't realize that.
It's been surpassed.
Gosh,
there's been about two or three, at least two, I think. Sandy Hook's one of them.
I guess that is a school, isn't it? Yeah.
And there's another one too. Virginia Tech might have surpassed it. I'm not sure, but anyway. And then the third one was another one, again loosely based on something true, which I can't remember the name of it. Is it Last Days?
There it is. Yeah, Kenny's got it.
Oh, there you go. Last Days, which is again loosely based on sort of the last days of Kurt Cobain. Although for the sake of the movie, they made a fictional character with fictional people in it, but it was very, very sort of similar. Yeah. So I haven't seen that one, but I did see the Jerry movie, or at least most of it. It's hard to remember because it's such a floaty movie.
Yeah.
Like I can't remember. Did I see all of it or just parts of it? Because it's it's such a meandering sort of movie without a lot of focus.
Yeah, I would recommend Last Days, though. I think I like it more than Jerry. But Elephant is my favorite.
It's been on my list. And yeah, unlike you, I've always been really interested in Elephant. Not that I saw it back when it came out. I probably saw this, I think it was during my second stint at university, so it would have been about 2010, 2011 that I first saw it. And I was really, really impressed by it.
I saw it on, this may have been VHS, right around, 2003, 2004. Mm-hmm. I just rented it on a whim, and I've loved it ever since. And this was Columbine was 99, and this was 2003. And even though Gus Van Sant says it's not really Columbine, I mean, you can't really dispute that it's exactly Columbine.
So many similarities.
Yeah, it's too many to not be that. But just one thing I wanted to preface was. This is such a perfect movie to do considering, what's going on right now in society. But I really didn't want to get bogged down by a gun control discussion.
Yeah.
I really just wanted to talk about the film itself because,
Yeah, we're going to talk about the film and societal things and stuff like that.
But yeah.
Although at least, this is a fictional movie, but in the movie itself, it's kind of disturbing how easily the characters, at least in this fictional movie, get guns, right? Like, it seems like it's way too easy in the movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true in other places, right? Like
in the movie, what do they just order online or something and they come in the mail?
Yeah.
They're like on like gun.com and they come in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, I don't know anything about those sites, so I wouldn't know how they work. And it's possible that maybe in 2003 stuff like that was looser, and now it's been tightened up. I really don't know, but it certainly is sort of a disturbing thing in the movie that they're. I mean, not only because of what they're going to do, but also they're both minors.
Well, the guys in Columbine actually got they had a friend that was over 21 buy them at a gun show, and then I think they got the Tech 9 from somebody they worked with.
Yeah. That's what it was.
Sold them a $200 weapon for $500.
Because they themselves, as minors, could not go into. They even went to a gun show and stuff, and they couldn't buy it. So, I mean, at least that much work. But again, it didn't prove to be too much of a hurdle because they knew people that could get it for them, etc. But anyways, coming back to the movie itself. So, I was just really impressed with this movie the first time I saw it, and I remember reading like the people were kind of upset about it coming out when it did, because maybe they thought it was sort of a too soon thing. But, in retrospect, it was perfect timing in a way. Maybe around then people didn't realize how prevalent school shootings and shootings in general were going to become. But, to say, oh, let's let some time go by, it's too soon. It's like, no, it's kind of right in on the ground floor, because even in the years after this, coming up to now, like this stuff is only just sort of accelerated. So, and the movie's good, too, because of the way it isn't about necessarily lecturing society or pointing fingers or anything like that. It's just more of an expression about maybe what it's kind of like to be in and around this sort of event. Although, no movie could ever really capture that, the horror and stuff. But the movie really goes for realism, and I give it a lot of credit for that. This is a film that is very uncinematic on purpose.
Right.
It's very like a documentary style shot movie, and it's there's nothing cinematic about it. It's mostly long takes following characters walking around and having conversations. That's not about musical cues or dynamic camera angles or switching the camera around and doing close-ups or anything. Any of the movie's trickery that is good in other movies. We want to see it, but this isn't about that. This is about sort of documenting something and making it feel as real as possible. And again, the actors in it really, for the most part, were the actors. They just recruited, actual high school kids. So it comes off as very authentic.
Yeah, there's no soundtrack at all, is there?
Well, there's music that happens. What's the word for that? Eidetic or whatever. Music that's within the movie. Well, there's a soundtrack, I guess, at the very beginning and ending, sort of. Although it's just a reprise, I think. Like at the very end, when we have that like shot as the credits start, we hear the Fur Elise again. But for the most part, the music you hear is just like within the film, being
really
played
adds
by the characters.
to the realism, and not hiring actors, hiring actual kids, and I think a lot of it was
improvised.
Improvised. So that really added to it as well, and I liked how it showed the point of view from different characters, because it's basically the one few hours or whatever that's shown over from different perspectives. Yeah, and
sometimes the characters cross paths and intersect. So sometimes you'll see something 2 or 3 times from different perspectives.
Yeah, it's really an interesting way to tell the story.
Except I guess with the shooters themselves, they must actually have to backtrack a little more, because they couldn't have done that all in one day. They must have backtracked at least a couple days.
You're right.
With shooters, because it shows them ordering the guns and it shows them practicing with the guns and doing a few other things. So apart from that, all the other characters, it seems to be around the lunch hour at a school. It seems like our first character, John, I think he's coming back to school after lunch break, and it's when lunch break is almost wrapping up. It seems like there's maybe 10 minutes left at school. Or maybe they're switching to another one. It might be a big school. Some schools, they have 2 lunch breaks because there's so many kids. I didn't go to school like that, but that's what it seems to be. It seems to be like transitioning from lunch and going on it. So it winds back a little bit and then it goes a little further. But it doesn't take place over that much time, except with the killers, where it must actually backtrack to a couple days at the very least to show some of their prep. But there isn't a lot of it. And as we said, this isn't a movie about like providing answers or anything like that. So we're given some possibilities with the killers. We see them planning it, but they never talk too much about their motives or anything. And we don't. There's no detailed backstories for anybody. We don't, know anything beyond this timeline. We don't know about anything that might have happened to them years ago or months ago or even days ago, really. One of them does when he's talking to the principal before he kills the principal. He talks, Eric. He talks about how they were picked on a lot and they did nothing. We barely see this. We see some people like throw some stuff at Alex in a classroom when Alex is introduced, but that's really all we see. So the movie is just sort of about showing possibilities, but not coming out and saying any real definitive reasons.
Which is fine. I mean, that's essentially what we found out about Columbine.
Yeah, and I think that's true too. I mean, the movie does what it's like in a lot of real life, where we don't really get answers or closure. In fact, this is less closure anyway, because in real life, school shootings end in one way or another. This one doesn't even show the end, so it's left up to the imagination how it ends. Does he kill more people? Does he kill himself? Does he fight with the cops, et cetera, et cetera? We don't get to see that. So that's, again, something that's left up to us, because the movie is just really trying to capture sort of one sort of area and not go beyond it, I think. But, we get a few sort of vignettes, each featuring a character. There's about 7 or 8 of them, I guess. A couple of them are in a group. We've got John, who's the kid with the blonde dyed hair that gets driven to school by his father. Michelle is the girl with glasses. Eric and Alex are the shooters, so they're together. There's a couple. I don't remember their names, but there's a couple. There are 3 girls, a girl posse, as it's sometimes known. 3 girls, and there is another lone guy. He's the photographer.
Right.
And then towards the end, there's kind of a fake out with a character named Benny, a black student. That's kind of almost like a fake out one, because his story amounts to very little, and he doesn't even have any dialogue.
Yeah, it's kind of, I didn't really understand. Was he just trying to figure out what was going on there? Or?
Yeah, I think so.
You watch like 3 or 4 jump out the window, to escape, presumably, and he's going around to scope out what's going on.
Yeah, I hate to admit it, but I think, again, this is my high school self, not my adult self or myself even after Columbine or anything like that. My high school self might have done sort of the same thing, not because I was brave, but because I just it wouldn't have registered that something like a shooting would have been happening.
Yeah.
And I would have just been really curious. So even though I saw people running away, I would probably be going towards the sound. So there'd be a good chance that if it happened at my school back when I was there, I would have been like one of the people that got killed, even if I wasn't in the area, because I might have gone directly to it, because I had that sort of nature where I'd be like, what's going on? Yeah. And, we'll talk a little about Columbine too. So I'll just say, Jay and I have talked about Columbine before, and sort of our memories of it when it happened. We were both in high school when Columbine happened, weren't we? Or were you just out of high school at the time?
I think I was a senior. Yeah.
So and I was just starting high school, or I was in my middle year of high school, or
it was 99, right?
Yeah, it was 99. So it was the second half of, so the 98, 99. So it was my first year. It was my first year because my first year of high school was 98, 99. So this is spring of 99. So yeah, I was in high school, and also because of where I live, the time difference. I think I'm 2 hours after Colorado. So when I came home from school, this was happening, and my mother was watching it on TV. And I remember after a little while, she couldn't watch it anymore, and she left, and she told me not to watch it, but I kept watching. I was fascinated. And part of it was I guess because you can almost, even though school shootings had happened before Columbine, again, this was sort of a big watershed moment. You can almost divide time into pre-Columbine and post-Columbine, where I was naive enough where I was watching the television coverage, and there was one point where the news channel, one of the reporters, had gotten in touch with a student who was hiding in the classroom talking on a cell phone to them. And the student was detailing some of the things that he'd seen. And at one point he said, like, just looking out the hallway window, very quickly he saw the two gunmen walking down the hallway, and he said something like, I think they're stalking, looking for more people to kill. And I thought, no, that's not right. Like, I didn't think, I knew, like, I thought, yeah, there's people in the school, but I didn't think two students have come just to kill everybody they can. Like, that's not what I thought. I thought something else was going on. I thought there was some sort of other motive, some other goal. So that shows how sort of innocent and naive I was at the time, where I didn't really buy that. I was like, okay, this guy's all shaken up. He's seen people shot, so of course that's what he thinks. I'm like, they're not hunting people. They're doing something else, or they're going to take hostages or something. But no, and and that's become the MO of these school shooters, which is not any sort of goal. It's not hostages. It's not negotiating with the cops or demands. It's not even killing specific people. It's just racking up a body count, period. Just kill as many people as possible. But at the time, I didn't conceive of that.
I think I may have told you this before, but one of the first school shootings in this whole spree, the few years there where it was quite a few, was right near me. It was in Pearl, Mississippi. A guy named Luke Woodham killed his mom, then went to school, and I don't think he killed too many people, but was right at the beginning of that deal. And I think I was in like 10th grade when that happened. Right. And then I think between that and Columbine, there was another one in Arkansas, and those kids were young. The ones in Arkansas, they were like 11 or something.
Wow!
And they didn't go into school. They were just picking kids off with rifles from a distance. And then Columbine happened, and because of Columbine, I couldn't wear my trench coat anymore to school.
Huh.
Which was kind of shitty.
The other thing, a lot of misinformation came in after Columbine, right? Like people believe for a long time the narrative that these were two outcasts that were taking revenge on society. Then you find out, well, actually they weren't popular, but they were fairly well liked. They weren't constantly bullied or anything like that. But in the aftermath, there was all sorts of misinformation flying around, and all sorts of course, what always happens, fingers being pointed at various things. Like, oh, it's Marilyn Manson and violent video games, stuff like that. And again, this movie almost sort of pokes fun at that because it shows, a few things. It shows one of them playing a video game where he's killing, which is actually based on Jerry, where he's going around in the desert shooting clones of Matt Damon and Casey Affleck. And you see them watching some Nazi stuff. Can you imagine you're the stupid delivery guy delivering a gun to a house with teenagers, and while you're giving the gun to them, they're watching Nazi stuff? But I know he wouldn't realize that. But still, you just think like how like they don't even have to hide anything.
Yeah, I mean, if only it was that easy. But just to make the point, you can't just like order a gun and have it delivered to your house. Like,
yeah, I thought that was sort of for convenience sake.
I mean, even if you're of age and cleared of background check and everything, you can't do that.
I just figure like they would use like a parent, like they're kids. You need a credit card to order stuff online. So I figure they're using a parent's credit card. So maybe that's how it works. They check the background and, the parents are fine. So they think that the parents are buying it. I don't really know.
You can order guns online. You can, but they have to be sent to an authorized dealer and then they perform the background check when you pick the gun up.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
think they could just go directly to your house.
It's not as easy as people think, but I mean, granted, it probably should be a little more difficult, but
But so they show like a few things like that. With the Nazi stuff, I mean, I get it, like because I think one thing about like any sort of shooter is they don't necessarily have to have like the specific Nazi ideologies to still like admire what the Nazis did, because what the Nazis did, whether regardless of what it was based on, was they took mass murder and they made it like super efficient. Basically, they took something and so anybody, regardless of whether you're a racist or like that, but these disturbed people that just want to kill as many people as they can, of course they would look up to the Nazis because they say, damn, like you're going to exterminate people. That's the way to do it, So I think that's kind of what's in here, like because there's nothing suggesting that these characters were like specifically racist or anything like that. The killers in Columbine, I guess, were racist, but I don't think it was a big part of their. It wasn't a big part of their motivation because they would kill anybody.
Were they? Okay, I didn't. I don't
Well,
think I
yeah,
realized that.
they specifically there was a few eyewitnesses saying that like when they shot this black kid, they like spent some time taunting him and throwing racial slurs at him and stuff like that before they killed him.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they just as easily killed white kids too. They didn't care, but they just thought, okay, here's a black kid, so we can also blah blah blah. So,
But you can also say words to him.
yeah,
Um, yeah, but they were, there was always the trenchcoat mafia, but I don't think they were even in the trenchcoat mafia.
no,
In that
they
club,
actually weren't.
group at school or whatever. They were just wearing the trench coats because it covered up their weapons.
Yeah, exactly. Good way to carry the weapons. But that's the other thing. Like even during the live footage I was watching, people were when they were talking to students, they were already throwing around that term, trench coat mafia. So you can just imagine like some of the students that were actually rented or parents of that being like, "Oh my god!" And then you find out, oh, it's actually not them at all. It's just two other kids wearing trench coats.
Yeah. But the way the story is told, from those different perspectives, it really gives you sympathy for the other characters, before they're like shot at the end of the movie. Except for I think John gets out.
Yeah.
Because he's not even in the school. They tell him to leave when they're walking in.
Yeah.
Or tell him to leave and don't come back or something like that.
Yeah.
So John's like doing his best to tell people not to go in and get people out and stuff like that. So, and he's like really what I think of when I think of this movie. I think of the John with the yellow shirt and the yellow hair. Just because he's in, all the scenes.
He gets most of the screen time. Yeah.
Yeah, he must. It
starts with him, and then you see that like when you're following other characters, sometimes he's around. Like there's a part where, it's towards the end where you finally get a timeline for everything. Like everything sort of culminates with when he meets the photographer in the hallway.
Yeah.
Michelle is passing them, and what happens is after they have their brief interaction, John goes outside and within a few seconds meets the killers. As he's meeting the killers, Michelle, who had been running, gets to the library first, and the photographer, Eli, who had been slowed down a bit by talking to John, he arrives second. And then within a few minutes after that, the killers have geared up, and the first place they go is the library, and the first person they kill is Michelle. But anyway, you can also time it so that just around the time John exits the building and is interacting with the dog, he is seen by the three girls in the cafeteria while they're eating their lunch, and they know who he is because one of them says, "Oh, is that John?" or something like that. So you get it. And then after they finish their lunch, they go to the bathroom to barf, and then they're by this time the shooting's already started, but they haven't heard it. And then Alex comes in, and again, it's not shown, but clearly Alex is going to take care of business.
I like that they didn't show it too. I didn't think it was necessary.
No,
it was the assumption was enough.
Yeah, but by this time we know Alex pretty well. He's not going to let anybody out.
When they were looking out the window and they said, John has a dog. I didn't know he had a dog.
Yeah,
that's when he met them, the shooters.
Yeah, just a couple seconds after.
I didn't see them from that angle from the lunchroom, but you see them from the other angle when it shows it from that perspective.
It makes sense from where they're sitting. You couldn't really see them.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing. Like, it's good to watch the movie at least twice because then you can look out for characters more and see them and notice them. Because sometimes when the camera's following a different character, you might actually see they intersect with somebody. Like Benny is actually, even though Benny shows up at the end, you actually see him early on. Benny's in the scene on the field where the people are like playing football or whatever. When the camera's following Michelle, or actually the camera doesn't follow anybody at first. That's the other thing. The camera is sometimes, there's long tracking shots following one character, but at certain times the camera will just stay and then it'll sort of drift and go to somebody else. And that's what happens a few times. It happens with the girls in the cafeteria. At one point, while they're leaving, the camera drifts away from them and focuses briefly on a conversation with two people sitting down, then comes back to them. And also before that, when they're buying their lunch, the camera goes behind the counter and shows the people working in the cafeteria, and then it comes back to them. So it does that a few times where you're hearing dialogue that's not on screen while the camera's panning around looking at other people.
It's a really interesting way of storytelling that I really like because you don't realize what you're watching is going to come into play later. You don't realize that that's actually important.
I think the unfocused part, I think, it, again, makes it feel real. It almost makes it feel like you're a person who's walking around. So, yeah, you aren't necessarily always laser focused on one thing. You might look and listen to something else. And so, yeah, I think that's very effective for making it feel real again and making it feel like you're actually following something that's happening.
I can't remember the exact number of takes in the film, but it's not very many, compared to a regular movie. It's just long takes, which I love. But I can imagine that a lot of people are really going to have a problem with that because it just lingers, for what feels like a bit too long, but it works so well in this film.
Sure. And early on, when you're following somebody like the guy with the girlfriend that puts the hoodie on, like he walks for about 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And nothing happens. But at the same time, it gives you a sense of the geography, which is actually sort of important. Like, this is a big school. It seems to have multiple buildings. Like, I often talk about how it's hard to relate to a lot of the high schools I see in American television and movies. And again, this one seems like a much bigger, fancier school than what I went to. It has a lot of facilities and stuff. Like, it had like a photo lab. Like, didn't have that. Had like a gay straight alliance. Which is I guess.
Is that where the kids were having the discussion about if you see someone, how do you know if they're gay or not?
Yeah, it was a gay straight alliance.
Okay,
meeting.
I didn't realize that's what that was.
Because at one point, that's what the girlfriend says to him, that she's gonna go to that meeting, is what she says. And stuff. Which again, maybe they would have at my high school now, but that was something that wasn't really talked too much about in my high school. But so that's more maybe a product of the time. It's 2003 now. Stuff like that is opening up, but still, it just has more facilities. It was a much bigger place than my high school, for sure. Like, if you're gonna do a long take walking my high school, it wouldn't take very long.
How many people were in your graduating class?
Trying to think. 214?
So that's not small.
No, it wasn't small. I think it was 214, something like that. My high school was probably just short of 1,000. The junior high I went to was a smaller place, but it was overpopulated. So there were actually more people at my junior high than my high school. But no, my high school wasn't like a rinky-dink high school, but I just mean it wasn't very big. And again, it didn't have things like cameras or a nurse's office or a security guard or any of those things that I often see on TV.
I think a lot have security guards now.
Oh, yeah. Probably.
Did it have more than one level? Like more than one story?
Yeah, it was 2 stories.
Really?
It was 2 stories. And it was almost kind of like 2 buildings because there was a further back section that had been added. It's kind of funny because it got added in the late 60s, and yet everybody that went to high school still called it the new wing. I remember when Ryan's little sister, she's 2 years younger than us, was going to go to the school, and we were telling her what places. She's like, I'm not going to call it that. We're like, yeah, you are. Everybody does.
Call it the old wing.
Yeah, or whatever. But yeah, it's the same high school my mother went to.
Wow.
Trying to think if anything ever happened there. Well, in 1983, a then unknown Bryan Adams played the gymnasium there.
Oh, awesome. Is it still standing? Still functional? That's cool.
My elementary's gone though, replaced by a new one. My elementary was really old. My elementary was built in 1940, and got torn down sometime around 2002, 2003. Now, this has nothing to do with anything, but I might as well tell the story anyway. So, in the summer of 2003, this was before I was living full time up here, so it was in between my years of university. So I was back in Sydney, but I was taking some summer courses at the university there, just to occupy my time or build it up. And they were fun courses. One was a children's lit class, and the other was one on playwriting. And anyway, so I would go out there a couple times a week. And one of the times, on the way to like my class, there was like this big new part there at the time was like a newly built part. It was like this really big open sort of hallway, really high ceilings and stuff. And they were having some sort of like I don't know, because it was summer, or maybe it was technically maybe still May, because it was a thing like with elementary kids like doing school projects. It was some sort of like, it wasn't like a science fair, but it was some sort of like fair where kids were displaying their projects. And I can't remember what most of the projects were, but one of the kids was doing who went to who went to the same elementary I went to, was called Colby, was doing his project documenting basically its history and its demolition, because this was just around the time it was being torn down, and he had like a laptop sitting there that was playing on a loop showing the destruction that had been taped. But he also had various like yearbooks, and I found myself twice. I found my grade 3 class and my grade 5 class. And I excitingly told this to the kid. I was like, that's me. And he did not care at all. Like, I thought it was amazing, and he didn't care. And so then people that were coming to look at it, I was trying to tell them that was me, and they didn't care either. It's just one of those things where it's something that seems really amazing and interesting to you. You're like, what are the odds? What are the chances? And there was nobody to tell. Like, nobody cared.
Yeah,
I was like, that's me in grade 3 and me in grade 5. Which, I mean, I was only about 19 at the time, but I guess to this kid it meant I was fucking ancient, right?
Yeah.
Because I was part of the old school. But yeah, I thought that was funny that he had 2 of those yearbooks, and I was flipping through, and I was like, there I am again.
That's funny. Yeah, to anyone, like, if you're over like 19, 20, you're might as well be an elderly person.
I'm an adult. But yeah, this movie, of course, makes me always think about my time in high school. And even though there's a lot of stuff I can't relate to, I mean, the kids themselves, sure, they do a pretty good job of just having sort of little inane sort of everyday conversations that kids have about this or that or the other thing. And it's cool, too, because one of the things that bothers me about sometimes when they do certain fiction, especially when they adapt it, and they might maybe change things to make things more convenient. Sometimes they'll make characters that maybe in the original version didn't know each other. They'll make them know each other, or they'll make them interact more. This isn't the best example. One of the things, it's not a big deal, but like the difference between the Harry Potter books and the movies is that in the books, it's a little more fleshed out, like what classes certain students are taking, what year they're in, what house they're in. Whereas for the purposes of the movie, they'll just often shove them all together in the same area or same class. And that bothers me, even though it's not that big of a deal, really. But what I like about this movie is like some of the characters know each other, some of them don't, and I just kind of like that, because it just seems more realistic, right? Like they're not all going to know each other, and they're not all going to be friends. It's a big school, but I like how some of them know each other, or they just sort of only know each other sort of by sight, right? The 3 girls think that the guy with the girlfriend's cute, but they don't really know him. They just know who he is, and they're talking to him. And one of them says, like, how about our girlfriend slapped somebody? And you wonder if it's a lie, because the girlfriend seemed really nice. Like, would she really slap somebody? But, that's, again, sort of how high school works. It's full of gossip and people saying stuff about each other. So it's a nice little touch, making it feel kind of real. And it's not necessarily about, like, when you're watching a movie, a more cinematic movie about a high school, it's more important to form the characters by really making them stereotypes, right? Mm-hmm. Like, these are the jocks, these are the geeks, these are the art. In this, the kids, you can tell the difference between them, but again, the lines are more blurred, which is more realistic.
Right, they're not everyone's not going to fall into some, exact puzzle piece. Mm-hmm. 'Cause that's the way my high school was. We all pretty much got along with each other regardless. I know a lot of people can't say the same thing, but it's like you're the nerds and you're the jocks, but
I mean, my high school was definitely cliquey.
Everybody was pretty cool with each other, though. Considering,
but I mean, I guess my high school was cliquey, but there wasn't like tension or like any sort of like bad feelings necessarily between groups. The only time that happened was more of like a regional thing. It'd be like it was the city place. Sometimes there were kids from like outside the city, like the county places, and sometimes they didn't get along with other people, but that wasn't necessarily like a group clique thing. But
like the Jets and the Sharks that show up, they all start snapping.
But yeah, there were definitely cliques and different groups and stuff like that. And I've often said how I didn't really, again, like when I was talking about the Killers, not that I was similar to the Killers, but I was not popular in high school, right? Like I wasn't going to run, if I ran for student council, no one was going to vote for me. People weren't going to cheer my name or anything like that. But I was well liked. People from different groups liked me, and I got along with a lot of different people. And I often, unlike a lot of people, I didn't always eat lunch with the same people. I could eat lunch with multiple different people, and usually that is sort of segregated in its way, as kids do. But there were at least 3 or 4 different groups that I could eat lunch with or hang out with. So I kind of straddled the lines.
in hindsight, I wish I had been a little more open and not so closed-minded about a lot of things. So I could have done that because I probably missed out on a lot of opportunities.
I mean, I guess that's, I mean, I was an immature punk like a lot of people back in high school, but at least I can say, with some pride that I think I was a more sort of open-minded person than a lot of those people, in that, I did hang out with different sorts of people and I did cross lines. My school, its main thing was sort of having the international baccalaureate program, the IB program, which is basically, honors courses. It's like a notch above honors, and it's called international because it's in the schools all over the world. US, Canada, all sorts of schools have it. And actually, when you do your special IAB exams, they get all sent to like this. They all get sent to like this weird international headquarters where they mark your exams and stuff. So I was different in that, like, I didn't take full IB. I only took IB of the courses I liked. So there were kids that, they were super academic and super nerdy. They took a full IB course load. And then there, of course, were kids that didn't give a shit about that and took the normal courses. I was kind of both, because I took, I wasn't going to take, I didn't like math or science, so I did not take those in IB, but I liked English, I liked history, I had a background in French, I took those in IB. So I mixed with, some of the more academic nerdy kids and also the normal kids. I didn't play high school sports, but I had played sports with a lot of the high school guys. I had played soccer and hockey with them when we were younger, so I knew them and stuff like that. I was in band, so I was sort of all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't like an asshole, but I don't know, set in my ways, not open-minded, man. Just I wouldn't give people a fair shake. I had already formed my opinion of you based on one experience, which
yeah, it's pretty common, I guess.
As an adult, I've learned that's not the best way to do things, but I probably missed out on a lot of opportunities that I could have had, potential friends and such, but that was kind of a loner for the most part. I had plenty of friends that I hung out with, but I was quiet.
Yeah,
generally pretty quiet person.
Well, I became sort of more a loner in my grade 12 year. I had a very unhappy grade 12 year, in that I was drifting from my main friends, and that they were interested in things I wasn't interested in. They were trying to get in with the more popular crowd, and they were really interested in the stuff that they did, and it was always about getting drunk on the weekends, and I didn't care about that.
Yeah.
I was also in love with a girl that, didn't care about me and was dating a complete jerk. So that was my main blind spot that I haven't barely matured with, which was, growing up, there were girls that liked me that I basically did not give the time of day because I was fixated on some unattainable girl.
Right.
I spent most of my youth that way. It wasn't until I got older that I realized how foolish that was and broke out. And that's not like I broke out completely. There's women are still my big weakness and blind spot. I still make the same mistakes, fuck up my life for them over and over again. But at least I'm a little bit learned a few things since high school. But yeah, so my grade 12 year was a very unhappy year. But again, I can't relate to the rage that these shooters would feel. It was nothing like that.
Absolutely.
I felt isolated and I felt sad, but I didn't feel angry. And basically all I thought was, okay, and it wasn't like it was a living hell. I was just thinking, okay, get through this year and then I can go to college. So I had a goal in mind and stuff. And it's not like every day was a slog or anything. I just felt sad when I'd go home because my friends would stop calling me it's because I just didn't want to hang out with them and stuff, and I didn't really know what to do or anything. And at this point, I had quit hockey, and the only thing I was doing was reffing. And so some of my social life had taken a hit in grade 12, and I was trying to focus just on getting good grades and stuff, but I was unhappy. I was unhappy.
Yeah, so was I, and looking back on it, I shouldn't have been unhappy. Everything was going pretty great for me, but yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say anger necessarily, but I, definitely was some jealousy and other stuff like that.
Sure.
But never anything that would make me do something like that.
No.
I don't know. I feel like there's some sort of maybe a chemical imbalance or something that causes stuff like that.
I think so, because even at its worst, people always talk about high school can be hell and stuff like that. And I realized that I did not have nearly as bad a high school experience as some people. But 99% of people, they're still just going to come through that okay.
Yeah. It's like a what doesn't kill you makes you stronger type of thing. I mean, I know bullying's not cool, and I'm not going to endorse it or anything, but some of that stuff kind of prepares you for life in a way. You know, people are assholes in real life. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, we've talked about the bullying experience a few times, and it's weird. Like, it's hard to determine what is worse. Was it worse back, like, in the older days? And we're not that old, but still some of the older days when it was more just, like, in your, at least with guys, more physically in your face, and you might get picked on and maybe even beaten up. Or is it worse now where there's kind of less of that, when it's more, like, online?
Yeah.
Like, I'm so lucky. Like, I don't know, can't tell you how happy I am that when I was in junior high, there was no online shit. You know,
I'm so
there was no Facebook profiles, there was no texting, there was none of that. Like, that would have been awful. Like, I feel sorry for anybody who's like junior high age that has to deal with that, because man, junior high kids are the meanest kids in the world. John Mulaney's right. Like 13-year-olds, nobody's meaner than like a 13-year-old.
I'm so glad there was no social media around back then.
Exactly.
Man, I could probably still run for office now if I wanted to. There was social media around when I was a kid. Nope.
Yeah.
It would have all been documented. Now it's only word of mouth.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't that bad of a kid.
But yeah, just all that online drama. Oh my God. So glad I never had to deal with any of that.
Yeah. I mean,
because I cared a lot about what people thought of me.
Yeah.
At a certain age, you know, I grew out of it. But I mean, I think everybody goes through that. It's a pretty rare person that, even no matter how young they are or whatever age, they're always, you know, I think I stayed true to myself, but that didn't mean I didn't care what other people thought about me. I did.
I remember being in kindergarten, you know, 5, 6 years old, like having a breakdown because of what I was going to wear to school. You know, was I going to be cool enough? You know. And it's so stupid, such a stupid thing to feel like, you know. Yeah. I could care less what people think of me now, you know?
Yeah.
And all those people that I was trying to impress, I don't know any of them, you know?
Yeah, who gives a shit?
But
and they would focus on really stupid things, yeah, like your clothes or your backpack or whatever.
It's not something you can tell, though. That you can't, you know, I'm sure my mom was like, don't worry about it or whatever, but yeah. you can't say that to someone, you know, to a kid, you know?
And again, I don't profess to be so much better or more mature than other people because I was, you know, made all sorts of mistakes and immature things. But it is true that that never occurred to me as a kid growing up, that I should like ostracize somebody because of what they wore or something.
Right.
Like it didn't even make sense to me. Like, why would I do that?
You know, I went to public school until I was in the 6th grade, and that was a really big thing there. Strangely enough, more so in the public school than when I went to a private school. The you know, say a kid got, you know, $6 sneakers, you know, he would get made fun of for that, you know, and you know they were you know, not very well off people, so they couldn't afford, you know, expensive sneakers. But it's just unfortunate. I went to the school that, you know, was, you know, these people were much more well off, but the dress code wasn't, you know, important. That was back when we could still like choose what we wore. Now they all have uniforms and stuff, which sucks, but I get it.
Yeah.
It's supposed to prevent that, right? It's supposed to prevent people from feeling, you know. It's
funny because it's not like I'm one of those people that cares a lot about clothes, but I would have super resented having to wear a uniform because one thing I'll say is like a switch really went off in me when I was about 13 too, where I just went from like a meek kid who really wanted to please adults. Like it was really important to me to get their approval and stuff like that. And then like, you know, a switch went off in me when I was like a teenager, which I guess happens to a lot of people, where I became very anti-authority.
Yeah.
So an anti-conformity. So to me, like I would have made a big deal out of having to wear a uniform. I would have been really mad about it.
Could you wear just like jeans and a t-shirt?
Oh yeah, I never had to do anything like that. I could just wear whatever I wanted to school. Yeah, I never went to a school with the dress code.
We had limited stuff. Like it was more like on the girls, like how short their skirt could be and stuff. That was really the big thing, which I don't have a problem with.
Yeah, I can't remember if there was any sort of restrictions on the girls or not. It seemed, as far as I could remember, going to junior, like my public school days, I can't remember anybody that like dressed their kid too much like a slut. Really, you know.
Yeah. think when you get a little older, it's not the parents necessarily, but it's the kids themselves changing and
or let them dress like a slut. I guess.
Or they change in the car or whatever. They
it's very possible. Yeah,
it was
a
thing.
Again, it's not something I thought about, right?
Like short shorts were a thing, and they were I mean they're a big thing now. They barely cover people's ass cheeks, but that was a big problem. They always had to measure something. I forget how they measure. But,
okay, here's another digression that's nothing to do with what we're talking about, but you had me at ass cheeks. So today, after, even before I had been out of town for a few weeks, I hadn't picked up my comics. So my comics have been building up for quite a while. Today, I finally went down to get the comics. And on my way down there, I was walking on the sidewalk just about a block away from the comic store. And I passed in front of this guy who's he wasn't too tall, he was maybe an inch taller than me, but he's a big fat guy. And he had a big full beard.
Yeah.
And he had I can't remember what his t-shirt said, but his t-shirt said something. I was like, that guy's definitely going to the comic store, right? So I thought, this is definitely a comic store guy, right? So I lose track of him, and I go into the store. It's not that big of a store, but I guess because it's nice weather and because the location is down on the water, we get a lot of non-comic people come in all the time, which is cool. I don't mind. It's cool. Plus, comics are much more in now than they used to be, right? So there's lots of just more casual people coming in. So there's actually quite a few people in the store, even though it's a small store and there's not much room to move around. So as I'm leaving the part where I'm looking at the new arrivals, I go to just go around to the next aisle part there. And then I have my great comic book store moment where it's that guy and he's bent over somewhat looking there, and he's just got so much ass crack with hair all over it, right in my face. I was like, oh my God.
You nailed it.
Yeah. It's classic comic book store moment there.
Yeah.
Which usually I don't get to.
That's
but yeah, it's funny. When I saw him walking on the sidewalk, I was like, he's going the same place as I am. And I was right.
Oh, man.
Speaking of high school, judging people by their looks.
Yeah. I bet he has a...
And I'm like, man, can't you feel that breeze?
Yeah.
Because it was low. It was low. I saw way too much.
Wonder if he has a body-sized pillow with an anime character on it.
Man. I mean, there's stores here where you can get them.
So they're actually a big thing, huh?
I don't know if they've become a big thing here, but they've been a big thing.
Yeah, I've seen plenty of memes of Americans in Japan walking around holding those.
Yeah. There's a pretty funny episode of 30 Rock where... what's his name? The guy that does everything. The guy that went to college and thinks he's better than everybody. James Franco. Where James Franco is on the show as himself. And what it is he propositions the actress character, the stuck-up blonde Jenna, to enter into a fake relationship with him to get the press off him because he's actually in a real relationship with a Japanese anime body pillow. It's pretty funny.
Wow, so those have been around since then, huh?
Yeah, and that would have been about 2009, 2010 or something.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a pretty funny episode. In another plot that crosses over towards the end is Liz has a younger cousin who's gay, who's escaped the small town and moved to New York so he can be accepted and free. And he thinks he's going to stay with Liz, and she's so hip and urban and stuff like that. And he's got totally wild behavior, and he's driving her nuts and stuff like that. But then towards the end, the last night he stays there, at one point Liz is at the club and she runs into James Franco with his pillow Kamiko, and Liz is like, "Let's do this." And so she has a threesome with James Franco in the pillow. And at one point, he's he comes out and she walks out in her pajamas, and then James Franco walks out carrying the thing, and his hair's all ruffled. He's like, "Hey, what's up?" And he's like, I think I'm going to go back to Whitehaven now or something. It's pretty funny. But yeah.
Well, yeah, the hip and urban Liz Lemon.
Yeah. It was a good show. I like the show.
Oh, yeah. It was a good show. I don't know that I've seen that episode. I need to go back and revisit it.
Might be season 4 or 5 because those are the ones that I've been rewatching. 4 or 5. But yeah, it's a good show. Actually makes Alec Baldwin seem somewhat likable.
Yeah. I'm trying to think who else is on. Who else is in the writer's room?
Judah Friedlander.
Yeah.
He's funny. He's one of the writers.
Who's the Shoot, I was thinking there was someone that like is really popular now, but I could be wrong.
It's funny. I just watched. I told you a few days ago. I watched Chapter 27, the movie with Jared Leto, where he plays Mark David Chapman. Talk, about leading up to the assassination of John Lennon. Judah Friedlander's in that, playing a completely serious role. He's just the photographer guy that he meets and he's talking to, waiting around outside John Lennon's townhouse or whatever.
I saw Judah Friedlander in something recently that he was just playing like a mongoloid.
Well, probably he's good at that, but his stand-up thing on Netflix is actually really good because it proves that he's really actually quick and smart guy, because most of it is actually just improv. Because a lot of it is like geographic. He's just asking people where they're from, and then he's just reacting to it. It's actually really good. Like, he's pretty quick, and he actually knows stuff. Like, when people say like where they're from, he actually knows about the places. Like, I appreciate that. Like, he's actually a pretty smart guy. It's called like America is the best, or I can't remember. America's the best America in the world. I don't know, something.
Yeah, I watched it after you. I think you had told me about it or something.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Because very little of it was like act. Most of it was just off the cuff.
Is he the only guy that's like you wouldn't know him if he wasn't wearing a baseball cap or a trucker cap or whatever that is?
Yeah. At first, I couldn't recognize him in the other movie because he didn't have a full beard. He usually has a full beard. But he's pretty fun guy. But he's the only person that jumps out when I think about the people that played the writers. There was a woman who played a character, the woman writer named Sue, and she was played by someone in real life named Sue Galloway, but I have no idea who that is. And I don't know who the black bald guy was. His character was called Twofer, but I don't know the actor.
Yeah.
They were the most prominent of the writers on the show.
Oh man, he was oh shit, what show was that? Oh, it was Curb Your Enthusiasm. That's what I'm thinking of.
Oh, okay.
Where he plays a mentally retarded person.
Judah Friedlander?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can pull that off.
Yeah, he nailed it.
Nailed it. I've seen a few episodes of that show. It's not really for me.
Oh man, it's good. I like it.
I appreciate it. It's just I'm not good at that really uncomfortable humor.
Yeah.
It makes me uncomfortable. Although then again, I really like it in Extras. So I don't know. It's kind of weird, isn't it? Because Extras basically has that kind of uncomfortable humor too, and yet I don't know. I like it more. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I think it's maybe because.
Yeah, in Extras, he never gets up. He never gets ahead. Even when he's like famous, like he's still made fun of. And,
like when he's famous, there's he meets David Bowie, and David Bowie makes up a song about how he sounds like a fat, sad little sellout. Oh my god!
Yeah, I watched that whole series again recently.
Oh, I have to. It's been a couple of years, but I own it. Good. I own it on DVD. It's really
good. Oh, he's a fat, like basically a fat piece of shit.
Yeah, that little man sold his soul.
That's exactly what I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's bad enough to have it, but imagine like David Bowie himself doing that to you. Oh my god, that would be terrible. You having a laugh? Just having a laugh.
Oh man.
But I'll try to return to the movie and try to think of some other things to say about it. It's a very simple, stark movie, and that's what we appreciate it for. It's simplistic approach, but the long tracking shots and the sort of drifting perspective again sort of sucks you in, makes you feel kind of like you're a person walking around observing these people. And then the stuff with the killers themselves is interesting, but again, deliberately not too enlightening, not really letting us know too much about what's going on, what their thought process is, like why they're doing it. Again, it's clearly just like with Columbine. It's something they've obviously been planning a long time. Like Columbine, it was like a year at least, I think, of planning.
Well, it didn't go as planned. The bombs didn't go off, so they had to.
And that's the same thing as Columbine too. But that was obviously taken directly from. Yeah, because for both, like the plan was to set several pipe bombs in some key locations, and then when they came off, besides the people that would kill, the people escaping that would all come into the area, and then they would like pick them off as they came.
Basically, herd cattle into one area and just shoot.
Yeah, and the same thing that happened in real life in Columbine happens in this movie, where they're just like, the bombs don't work, so they have to go to Plan B. So they go to the library and begin there, which I think is the same thing that they did in Columbine. Start at the library.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you it's like a lot of things. We talk about horror movies, slasher movies. Seeing that stuff in real life, it's almost surreal. So when people heard gunshots going off, it's like you said earlier. You didn't think it could actually happen. So
yeah, you think it's something else. Like what's
people
going
are
on?
like they're throwing pebbles at the window or something.
Yeah.
What is that noise? It's gunshots, man.
Right. And yeah, since it's not stylized violence,
right?
The gunshots in the movie sound much more like they do in real life than they do in movies, right? It's a much more realistic sound, which a lot of people just aren't really sure. Like a loud pop or something, like that's a gunshot. Like I'm used to like a movie where it's like that kind of thing, right? So yeah, it can make you nervous really about anything. Just ordinary fireworks or firecrackers.
Yeah.
Like, shit, that could be gunshot. Like I don't know. Here's the other thing too, like when you think about like people screaming and stuff like that, where I live, it's very normal, particularly like when the weather's nicer, to like late at night hear some like girl like in her 20s absolutely give a crazy blood-curdling scream. And like it's never been a fucking crime.
Yeah.
It's just like, and I mean she sounds like she's like being fucking murdered or raped or something. Yeah. And it's not. It's something completely like unrelated.
Role play.
Like, who knows, right? But, I mean, if I called the cops every time that happened, they'd think I was a goddamn nuisance.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You
become numb to it, right? You're like, okay, that's just some fight between people or some crazy drama, and, I don't want to get involved. So, yeah, that's why it's so easy for when these things to happen, the reaction to be so delayed. Because you don't think it's going to be that thing. You think, okay, something else is happening here. And that's why it's really hard for John to convince anybody. Although he's not really using, I guess, he's panicking. He's not really thinking clearly. Like he doesn't say anything like about guys with guns or anything. He just says like, don't go in. It's kind of vague. You can understand why people wouldn't necessarily listen to him.
I can see how that would, because he's not 100% sure what's going on,
Yeah, that's the other thing. Because maybe if he was 100% sure, he might have even tried to tackle them or do something. They don't have their guns out, right? Like they are vulnerable. But again, he's like, I don't really know. But then when the guy, he says, some shit's going down, get out of here. That really does ring the warning bells for him. He's like, okay, this is serious. But yeah, but I understand sort of being in that weird place where, yeah, I guess he should be screaming, but he's not. It's more like, okay, just caught between knowing what to do, where you're unsure of your actions.
In 1964, Kitty Genovese, she was like murdered and everyone heard her and like nobody did anything.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that's kind of what you think about, but it's like those people probably actually heard what was going on and didn't do anything. This is like, I don't know. I had the same thing. Like I've called 911 like one time in my life, and someone had already called for what I called for. Yeah. And they're like, "We already know, sir." They were like all pissed off.
I know, like you did something wrong,
man. I felt like I'm a hero here.
Yeah,
there was a fire at a convenience store.
Yeah,
someone had already called. But yeah, it's like you don't want to be the asshole who like blows everything out of proportion and makes you look stupid, right? But I mean,
exactly.
That's kind of how I felt like John was. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to, act like a crazy person here, and these guys are just doing a science project or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you see something, say something, right?
Right. Which.
I mean,
again, it's sort of it is a double-edged sword, right? Like, maybe it's the right thing to do, but it does lead to a lot of trouble, like a lot of people getting hassled for no good reason,
right?
So
but that's the price you pay.
I suppose so.
I'm gonna,
I remember when I was in high school, at least twice we got out because of bomb threats, which were, of course, pure horseshit, just hoaxes. But I can remember at least twice getting sent home because of bomb threats. And I mean, this is my little rinky-dink town, not where anything like that ever happens. But they still have to take it seriously, and
they probably take that stuff a lot more seriously now.
Yeah,
you would think.
I mean, two really sort of they were national events. Like Columbine became a national event, even though it was just in one town, and then just a couple years later, you had the terrorist attacks of 9/11, and then it's a much different world where security has been changed in so many ways for schools and airports and stuff like that. I think that's another reason why people get, not to go too much into it because we're not going to, but get frustrated sort of about the gun debate and stuff. It's like, look how much we changed about airport stuff. And yet, like overnight, and even though it like inconveniences people and slows everything down, like people accepted it, and yet you can't get other people to like accept that sort of stuff when it comes to guns. I can understand that sort of frustration, right? It's just like, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a hard problem to tackle. You know, it's just such a big thing that, I mean, it's no easy solution, and I think that's what people are looking for.
Right. I mean, exactly. Like, I mean, I'm one of the people that is, people know my position. I am very much on the side of strict gun control and stuff like that. But I by no means think that's the one thing that's going to fix it. Like, it's a multifaceted issue, right? There's all sorts of other things that go into it and need to be addressed. And as you said, there's no quick fix or easy solution. But you just have to tackle things one thing at a time. And I guess I just don't like when people dig in their heels and just go, that won't work. It's like, fucking try, do something, man.
I mean, like with the Columbine kids, there were warning flags there that, I mean, the cops should have investigated those pipe bombs that they did not. And
exactly.
If they had done that, they may have prevented the whole thing from happening. It's just like, we got to follow up on stuff like that to, maybe prevent, mental illness.
For sure.
And, pipe bombs, knives, guns, whatever, none of that stuff needs to happen regardless.
Right. At least I think nowadays there's more of an electronic trail. Like this is 98, 99. I mean, this was a very free internet. Like, if you wanted to go to sites about building pipe bombs, like, it didn't raise any red flags anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of undetected. Nowadays, I think we're more with stuff like, we complain about it, our data being tracked and stuff like that. But I mean, stuff like that does happen because you do hear about sometimes people getting like visits from the FBI and stuff because they looked at this or that, even though they weren't going to do anything. So, at least in the case of Columbine, they were because they were, as we said, so much changed after they did it. They were kind of in a world where it was even easier to do, although it's still quite easy to do, as we see, with continuing to this day.
Yeah, there's a documentary show on Netflix about terrorist attacks that were prevented. That's how they detect a lot of them is through email correspondence or.
Right.
I know a lot of them, like they're ordering ingredients to a bomb or whatever, and they that's how they find them.
Yeah.
Or whatever something of that nature. So it's all electronic these days. But it's like we look at the Anarchist Cookbook. That thing's tame compared to what's out there now.
Yeah.
Like I watched a documentary about the guy that wrote that thing, and he's like a pacifist. It's hilarious that he wrote that book.
I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
a really interesting documentary. I don't remember the name of it, but
does he regret writing it?
Yeah,
I
think he does big time. It was like a big hippie movement thing,
yeah,
towards fight the real enemy type thing.
Yeah, the nature of terrorism has changed so much over decades. As we talked about, we talk about terrorism so much now in the post 9/11 world, and yet it's not like it's a new thing. Like the 70s was like the crazy golden age of terrorism, where we didn't have the sort of security. Planes got hijacked constantly. You just get a gun on board so easily, There were hundreds of plane hijackings in the 70s, hundreds. And then you had people like the Weather Underground running around the U.S. blowing shit up. They weren't trying to kill people, but they were still doing extremely dangerous things. And actually, the most people they killed, they wound up killing about 5 of themselves. That's their highest body count, included killing some of themselves. But I mean, yeah. So like even though the Weather Underground weren't like a murderous terror, they were still willing to use lethal force. Like they wanted to blow up empty buildings and scare people, but I mean, again, still super dangerous.
Yeah.
So I mean, terrorism has changed a lot, and of course nowadays it's almost always linked to extreme Islam stuff with good reason. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but that presents another whole host of problems. But again, this movie, I mean, do people classify? I guess they classify like something like a school shooting as an act of terrorism.
Yeah, I believe so.
Because I mean, there's not really any other gain. It's only to produce terror and death.
Domestic terrorism.
So yeah, domestic terrorism.
Yeah, it's kind of odd why Van Sant is determined or is adamant that this is not based on the Columbine shootings.
Didn't even start out like he was asked to do something about Columbine, and then they just changed it halfway through or something. Like
that's what I heard too. But yeah,
I've lost your picture.
Oh really? Is it back?
No, I've got a black screen. I don't know if that's what other people are seeing, but I've got a black screen. This is not particularly important.
I think I'm just frozen on the stream.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did see you freeze, so maybe it'll just come back. I can still hear fine, so
Let's see.
we can continue. Yeah, it's still just me, as far as I can tell.
Okay, whatever.
It'll there, you're back. You're back
okay.
for me, so that's
cool.
Good. Yeah, I'm just trying to think about the stuff following our killers, Alex and Eric, how it starts. Because it starts with them and it backs up a few times, but I think we just first see Alex in like a science class where somebody like throws stuff at him. Then he goes into the bathroom to like take some of it off. And I guess we're supposed to get the idea that he is kind of picked on to at least a certain extent, and it's bothering him.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all we really see. We don't see anybody pick on Eric. And much like the Columbine thing, you've got an instance where one is smarter kind of than the other, more the leader. In that, in this case, Alex is more the leader, and Eric is more just following him. In the instance of Columbine itself, like they've done various psychological things, and they basically said that, like in the case of Dylan and Eric, Dylan was the leader, and Eric was the follower. That Eric probably could have led a normal life and not even committed crimes if he just, got some therapy and proper medication. Where in the case of Dylan, he was like a stone cold, like psychopath who, if he hadn't carried out that, he would have gone on to, do some other violent crimes.
Did they said their wounds were self-inflicted, right? So does that mean that they shot themselves or one shot the other?
I don't think that's ever been released.
Okay.
I would assume they shot themselves because that's the more sure way of doing it. But that's something that differs with this movie too. That's interesting too. And again, is that and another question that doesn't get answered that you wonder. It's like, did Alex always they knew, just like in the Columbine thing, they both knew they were going to die one way or other. They were going to kill themselves. They were going to or die in a firefight with the cops. Same thing. And they say like that before when they get in the shower. He says, this is it. We die today. But did Alex always intend to kill Eric first? Did he decide that sometime during the shooting, or he just decide right on that spur of the moment, just as a whim, kill him? We don't get to know. You just get to speculate. Like, what do you think? I think he just killed him on a whim. I don't think he planned it. I think he just thought, this now is as good a time as any.
And why are they not members of the Gay Straight Alliance?
Yeah, what's their problem there?
That was actually, it shouldn't have been. Watching it, multiple times, you see their, relationship is more than that. But when he gets in the shower with him, I was surprised the first time I watched it.
Oh, well, it never occurred to me that they were gay. I just thought it was curiosity and pragmatism. Like he says, I've never even kissed anyone. They're like, well, this is pretty much our last chance, isn't it? So we might as well kiss each other. That's what I always thought. I mean, again, you could think maybe there's some latent homosexuality or there are feelings. But to me, I just thought it was, we've never kissed anybody, and this is the only chance we're really going to get, is basically what I thought. But again, it's an open to interpretation type thing.
Well, he definitely wasn't romantically involved with him because he shot him.
Yeah, exactly. But again, Al, I think they were kind of setting up that that same dynamic, that he was. I mean, the other guy's just as murderous, but he was even more cold and unfeeling, and that like his best friend. You get the feeling that Eric really liked him as his best friend, but Alex, it was just like, here's the tool that he could use, type thing, maybe.
Right.
That he's even more. Yeah.
He kind of used him. Molded him to be a killing machine.
But in the instance of Columbine, they would say self-inflicted gunfire.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess that could mean they pointed their guns at each other and fired on three, but I don't know. And I guess you wouldn't have heard this, but the big case, it's been national news for the end of July coming into August, was in Canada. There were two boys that had murdered some people and went on the run. So what happened was they were two high school students, and they actually murdered two foreigners. It was an Australian. I can't remember who the man and woman were. There were a couple. One was an Australian, one was an American. And they shot them, and they shot some 64-year-old man. And at first, the cops were just saying they were missing. But then they were saying that they were the culprits and they were the suspects. And this was in British Columbia. And they had a manhunt, and they crossed all out of British Columbia all the way through Alberta into Manitoba. So they went hundreds of miles. And it was going on for days. They were all over rural Manitoba looking. They'd taken some cars, left them, burned them, and moved on. And the manhunt finally ended somewhere in rural Manitoba, where they found them dead from self-inflicted gunshot wounds. So as far as we know, they only killed 3 people besides themselves. And so it wasn't like a weird planned shooting. It seemed almost sort of random. So, but again, no closure, no answers. So yeah, that was big national news here the last few weeks. The ongoing hunt for these suspects, because there's just so much space in there. There's just so.
Do you know the Gardner serial killer that killed all the homosexuals?
In Toronto?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any update in that? Has he been to trial already?
I don't think his trial started yet, but
because I'm just curious, have they found any more bodies? Because
they found quite a few. Yeah.
Oh man, it's so disturbing.
Yeah, he might be at this point Canada's most prolific serial killer. I'm not sure. Bruce Gardner or something like that, I think his name is.
I don't know his name right off, but
yeah, I think it's Bruce.
He killed more than the Big Farmer?
I'm not sure. But maybe they were saying that, the Pig Farmer in BC, you mean?
Yeah.
That murdered all those prostitutes, yeah. I saw a good documentary about that, too.
Really? I want to see it, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the lost women. Because a lot of them were like, indigenous women. So that's the 2 things for both stories. With that, it's like sort of like how like our government or our law enforcement doesn't seem to really care about indigenous women, and in Toronto, it's like how our law enforcement didn't seem to really kill that gay men were getting killed. Right. So those are both big angles there, and certainly valid points.
Yeah.
We've also talked too about how like that kind of serial killer is becoming more rare nowadays than it used to be, and it's being replaced by the mass shooter.
Why do you suppose? Is it just forensics have moved to a point where you can't really kill that many people and get away with it for as long?
I think that's a big part of it. Yeah, forensics has, and just because when we're talking about the golden age of terrorism, it's kind of the same thing. The 70s and 80s were the golden age of serial killers. DNA evidence wasn't around. People weren't like documented that well. You could move from state to state or province to province without people really noticing you. And people picked up hitchhikers all the time, didn't think anything of it. All that stuff. So that's why it was so much easier to be a prolific serial killer back then. Of course, there always will be that kind of serial killer because, as we talked about, there's the people that need that sort of intimacy. And especially the sexual component of, they want to rape the victim or have sex with the body and all that sick stuff. But whereas, if you're a spree killer, you can get a body count, but you're not going to have time to do anything intimate. You're just going to, shoot as many people or blow up as many people as you can. So there will be that sort of serial killer. But yeah, our society is so fascinated with that kind of serial killer. Again, it's all over our popular fiction and stuff like that. It doesn't really reflect that they're actually shrinking. And that what's much more common now is the spree type shooter. That's the much more common sort of mass murderer. So yeah, I would definitely say that's a big part of it. I also think notoriety comes into it. I think a lot of these people are less. They care less about getting away with it now, and just care more about like being famous and inspiring people and stuff like that. Because a lot of these shooters, they write manifestos and stuff like that. Like, it's not about eluding people or getting away with it. It's about making their statement and being remembered. And it's sad to say that it works, and it does inspire people. So many of these shooters now too, they talk about previous shooters that inspired them. It's a very awful cycle. That's actually not really brought up in this movie. They don't really talk about notoriety, and they don't talk about any sort of shooting that inspired them either. Ironically, the movie itself was accused of directly inspiring a shooting after it. See if I can find which one that is. I think it's on the Wikipedia page. Hold on.
So these guys are just like, I'm going to do all this chaos and I'm going to be remembered. Like, I'm going to be a famous person.
A lot of them, yeah.
That's so crazy to me. I mean, why would you want to be remembered for something so terrible?
I don't think that's. Again, these are really sick people because they're murderers anyway, right? But it's not too far off human psyche, really, because like look at all the people that will do stupid things for fame, like that will be on stupid, embarrassing reality shows, but they think it's great and stuff like that. So that's part of like the human psyche too. Is like there is a lot of people that are like really interested in unhealthy attention and unhealthy fame, even if it's unflattering. So it's easy to understand somebody that already has the mindset of like being a terrible murderer having, those sort of views when it comes to fame and stuff. Plus, they like the idea maybe of infamy, right? Like, I was a badass, And it is sad. We remember the killers a lot as a society. We remember them much more than we remember the victims.
Well, and there are segments of the population that look up to those people.
Yeah, that's true too. Like, some of the ones that maybe do survive, they go to prison and they get all sorts of fan mail and stuff. Yeah. So it's a pretty terrible.
Like, thing. I mean, Elliot Rodger's like a hero among those people, right?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. One of the incel movement.
So I mean, it's man. I guess I need to be in the right mindset to understand that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, be glad that you really can't. But yeah,
these people that go, it's like a child starved for attention that acts out and misbehaves to get negative attention because any attention is better than none, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just a feeling of notoriety and power, and that's the same thing with like the shooters. Like, they're really addicted to the power. Like, they're so happy when they have the guns and they're shooting the guns and stuff like that, because it's they think of all the people that fucked with them or whatever like that. It's like, I have this gun now, I pointed at you, and it's all gone. I have the power. You'll do whatever I say and you'll die if I want you to. You see a bit of that with Eric, with the principal, where he talks to him for a while and then says, yeah, I'm going to let you live, and he runs off, and then he just shoots him 4 times in the back. He always meant to kill him. That sense of power, because that's the other thing that a lot of these shooters have, right? They feel powerless. They feel like all this hate for whatever reason, all this anguish, and it comes to powerlessness too. Like, with the Columbine shooters, they were enraged that they broke into a van and they got arrested for it, and they were enraged that they were punished for that. Like, for them, that felt wrong. It was an injustice that they were arrested for a crime that they did commit. Like, that filled them with rage. So they thought, we're not going to get arrested this time. We'll go down shooting or shoot ourselves, and that's what happened.
I wish they would all do that.
Okay, Red Lake shootings.
I did see something about that, yeah.
The Red Lake shooting, spree killing in March of 2005 in Minnesota. 16-year-old Jeffrey Weiss killed his grandfather and his grandfather's girlfriend. Put on a vest, some weapons, shot 7 people at a school and wounded 5 others. And shot and killed himself, committed suicide in a vacant background. So I'll just jump ahead to the part where they said something about... Oh, there's something here. Motives, goth kid, trench coat, all that bullshit.
Uh-huh.
But I know there was something where, this movie got some of the blame.
That's kind of stupid, considering this is directly based on an actual shooting.
Yeah.
Red Lake shooting.
And quite a few shootings were inspired by natural born killers too. There's multiple ones I can remember where like the killers watched that movie multiple times before doing it.
So it happened in 2005, and the gunman had watched the movie 17 days prior to the event.
There you go. But I mean, sure. I mean, he could watch anything.
Huh. Wow.
But I mean, I think this movie, especially for the time it came out, was sort of an important movie because of the way it helps humanize victims, for one thing, and helps sort of show the bleak reality and doesn't sensationalize it in any way. It's not stylized. It's just sort of brutal in its realism. The violence is just abrupt and terrible. And we're not given really great reasons or anything, and we're not given great closure because it's so much like real life. And it ends on a very sinister note, of course, with Alex playing his game of Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo, where, again, we don't know what happens, but it's pretty easy to guess that he will probably kill both of them.
Yeah.
Nothing we've seen in Alex suggests that he's letting anybody go, and he's already shot and killed his own partner. So again, it's just being extra sadistic, which, again, was something that was reported by multiple witnesses about the Columbine killers, and that with some of the people that they were killing, they directly taunted them in different ways before gunning them down.
What's interesting is they don't make any attempt to show the SWAT team or anything.
No, none of that.
Because which I think is a good thing. because it's all like from inside. You don't see any of that external coming in.
The first time I saw it, I thought maybe when like it showed the sky, maybe at least hear sirens, but no, it's still saying like this is all before anything like happens. And it shows like it is very hard to have a decent police response to this, even if they get there on time, because the police don't know enough. They usually don't know enough. They don't know how many shooters there are. They don't know where specifically they are. They don't know how many students are trapped in the building. And so that's like what it was with Columbine. It was very like they never got to them in time. They shot themselves before the cops got there. And like the cop said, we couldn't just, run into where the shooting is. You have to clear it room by room.
Right.
And that's true because they don't know. There could be more shooters in other rooms, or there could be somebody who's dying that we have to get out. So you can understand. I mean, it's frustrating, but you understand like that's the way it has to be done. And they have, since Columbine, tried to improve ways of doing that, but still, logistically, it always is a problem. And again, it would be a lot simpler at a school like mine compared to a school like the one in the movie, because the school in the movie is quite large and quite complicated. And they said one of the problems with Columbine was like sometimes you'd have a room, you'd have like a hallway, and then you have a room leading off it, but that room would lead to other rooms.
Right.
So that makes it very difficult.
Like a labyrinth almost.
Mm-hmm. And as I said, one of the pieces of information they did get was that the killers were students. So it's like, okay, well, so they have to frisk all the students going out. Like, are any of these students coming out, the shooters pretending to be victims? So, that's something they did not attempt, but it's something that could be attempted.
I think some of the ones that got out that witnessed it, they told the police who the shooters were, or they identified the second shooter at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew who the two were, but like you said, they all look the same. I mean,
and they could take off a trench coat if they wanted. They didn't, but again, they could have.
You're a student. You look like all the other students. But I mean, nowadays, when every teacher and student is going to have a cell phone, I think maybe it can be a little bit different, maybe a little more well-informed.
I think so.
Hopefully.
Because, that's the other thing. Like, in this movie, John doesn't have a cell phone.
Right.
Probably if he did, he would have called right away because why not?
But nowadays, if this thing happened, like there would be like FaceTimes of it and like, Facebook streams and, live streams of the shootings.
I know. The killers might even live stream it themselves.
Yeah, that's true.
That's how sick it's gotten, right?
That's exactly true.
I think there were at least a few killers that planned on doing that.
I've seen videos on Facebook before they were taken down, back when I was on Facebook. Just a guy just randomly walking around, found an old guy and shoots him in the face. It's ridiculous, man.
Oh my God.
The way people think.
Yeah. I mean, when we were talking about, what's it called? Natural born killers, like nowadays it's that like turned up to 11 again.
Yeah.
It's media exposure and hysteria, and it all feeds into it. And
they were like rock stars.
Yeah.
Which hopefully it wouldn't be like that, but I could very well see it.
Then again, these people, these shooters aren't rock stars to most people, but they are rock stars to certain people, and some of them even want to imitate them and do it, and that does happen. So,
well, it's like all these like idiots are in prison, and like really attractive women show up, and get conjugal visits and stuff.
Yeah, I guess because they get to feel like they're part of something dangerous and exciting, and even glamorous. I mean, Jesus, there's nothing glamorous about murder, but. We're kind of conditioned almost to think there is. And again, that's another thing that's good about this movie. This movie's not about stylized violence. This movie's not about making it glamorous. It's not about musical cues or cool camera angles. It's just violence as realistic as they can make it. Just suddenly he takes out a gun and shoots the girl.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, abrupt. No musical cue, nothing, no cool line, just because that's how it happens. It's very brutal and it's very scary.
Yeah, he takes out the gun. I think before he shoots her, the
guy takes this picture, which I think is kind of like what we're, a microcosm of what we were saying, right?
It's like he knows what's about to happen, right? I mean, surely. Like, I'm going to document this.
Like one last shot. Like we don't see him die, but I doubt very much Eli got out of there.
Yeah, maybe.
But
they obviously let John live. They obviously didn't have a problem with him, but.
Yeah, well, they didn't really have time either, but screw things up to try to kill John, right? They'd have to like dig in their bag and pull something out. They had a plan and they stuck to it.
The actual guys, I don't think they had any sort of like actual list or, everyone. The objective was to kill everyone.
Yeah, it was to kill everyone. They do say something about jocks But again, that's more like a bonus because they say something when he's saying the plan. He says, when we'll get up there, it'll be great. It's like jocks and everything. He says something like that. Just like the Columbine people, one of them said to the other, like, shoot anybody with a white hat, because I guess the sports guys had white hats or something like that. But again, that's just more of a bonus because they would kill anybody. So they were, they took maybe extra pleasure in killing what they thought was a certain kind of student, but they'd kill anybody because it was all about body count. But that is something that got misconstrued in the wake of Columbine, and that a lot of people think it was this trench coat mafia. It was two guys that were really outsiders that were relentlessly bullied, and they were specifically going after the jocks and girls that teased them or ostracized them. And it's, as far as I can tell, just not true. And I've read a lot and watched a lot on that.
Really?
Dylan himself was actually fairly well liked. Eric was more quiet and stuff, but Dylan, people thought he was off and weird, but not oh, he's a loser. They're just he's kind of off and weird. We still kind of like him though. Type thing.
And he had girlfriends and stuff, right? He wasn't
I think he had a date for the prom.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I read that in the book about it. He actually there was a girl he liked, and she didn't like him, and he was really upset about it. And he wrote in his journal. But then later he had at least a date to the prom, which he obviously never intended on going to.
Yeah, it showed his prom pictures, I think, in the documentary I sent to you. Yeah. It doesn't really seem like, I really feel like that's a cop out saying these guys were losers and they were getting revenge.
That's what I'm saying. It's a false narrative as far as I can tell.
I think it's exactly. It's something more to it than that. It's just, it's not like revenge because, I'm mad at these people.
Yeah. They framed it that way.
Right.
They maybe try to convince themselves of that because, I don't know.
Well,
what did society do to them that was so bad, really?
And they seemed like they had pretty decent lives, right?
They had pretty decent lives. They committed a crime and they got arrested for it, but they got a slap on the wrist about it because they were minors and it was their first offense. And yet they acted like they were so upset about that.
What was his name? Eric was the leader there?
Dylan. Dylan.
Oh, Dylan was the leader? Okay.
Yeah, Dylan.
Well, he was the one with the anger problem, right? He got sent to anger management and stuff.
The anger problem.
I don't know.
From what I've read, Dylan was basically a lost cause. If he didn't do this, he would have done something at some point. But Eric, if he hadn't gotten involved with Dylan, there's a good chance that he could have just had a normal life if he had some therapy and meds and stuff. So that's the other thing that's really sad about some of these situations. Not even necessarily a shooting, but sometimes just when there's a murder or something, you'll sometimes get people coming into contact with each other, and it's an awful, awful mix.
I get it because that was what they said about a lot of the other shootings, and they were true. They were bullied, and they were trying to kill the guys or people who bullied them or the girls that didn't want to go out with them or whatever. But I don't think that was the case here.
No,
it doesn't seem
yet it sort of stands up as the ultimate example and the one that inspired a lot of the ones that went and did that.
Right.
But as far as I can tell, it's a false narrative.
But I had never done very much research on it until today. And
I did a lot of research over the years. I haven't recently, but it was something I was very fascinated with. And I read I didn't buy the book, but I read a lot of the book written about it in the bookstore. And it talked a lot about their lives. And you're right, they had pretty ordinary lives.
That's kind of what I assumed, though, because, that's what I heard in some news articles that talked about it, and such. But, I never really dug very deep and realized that wasn't the case. But
something interesting that also they kind of point out in the movie is sort of the lack of parents being around, because they're at Alex's house and they seem to have all sorts of free unsupervised time where they can hang around and watch Nazi stuff and order guns to the door and not worry anything about his parents being around.
Right.
They do have breakfast with his parents, and Alex stays over, and it's a school day, and they seem to suggest that it's completely ordinary for Eric to stay over on a school night. So that seems to suggest to me that Eric's parents really don't care about him, and they're almost barely ever even bother with him, is what I got from the movie. It's Dylan's parents were around, but barely, and they didn't really pay any attention when he did. And Eric's parents barely kept track of him. Which, I knew some kids like that, and luckily they were still good kids. They didn't get anything. I knew a kid on my street, he had a few older siblings, but still, they never kept track of him. Sometimes he'd be at my house and stuff, and then they might call like way later to find out if he was there. Like most of the time, they didn't even notice if he was around or not, even if he missed a meal and stuff like that. They just didn't keep track of him.
Well, that's like latchkey kids, man. Like,
yeah,
you get home and you've got like 3-4 hours to, do what you want till your parents get home.
Yeah, and I figure that's what it was with the Alex character in this, right? Because they're just lounging about the house, doing whatever they want, taking a shower together, which when I might have raised some eyebrows. But and also they point that Alex had some intelligence too, because he's a very good piano player.
Yeah.
They linger on that for a while.
He's obviously, mechanically inclined because he's able to make all these bombs and, different things like that.
So again, it's like it's sort of the it sort of refutes the idea that these are two desperate kids and their lives are so horrible and they've got no future, so they might as well go out in a blaze of glory and kill everybody. It's like, no, like you could have gone on and been good, productive members of society and good adults, then you didn't. Because
I'm glad we finally got around to doing this film. This is one of the first films I wanted to do when we talked about this show. Was a lot of Gus Van Sant stuff.
Yeah. So of course the title Elephant means a few different things, and one of the things is that it comes from a 1989 short film that was based on activities over in Ireland during the Troubles. Which, don't you think the Troubles is such a cute name for something so awful? A couple decades of like domestic terrorism and death. The Troubles. But anyway, so it would follow various like IRA assassins going out on missions and killing people. And it would do sort of a similar style, and that it would just sort of very documentary, sort of like the camera would just follow them. Mm-hmm. So that's where that comes from. And they say elephant comes from a few different things. One is something about like, the phrase, the elephant in the room. This case, I guess, being like school violence or gun violence or whatever like that. And the other is like that old sort of, I don't know, parable or fable or whatever about like the blind men that meet the elephant. And the idea being like, usually I think it's 5 men in the story, and they're all touching a different part of the elephant. So they all get a different idea of what the animal is. One touches the trunk and thinks it's like a snake. One touches the side and thinks it's like a wall. One touches the tail and thinks it's something. One touches the ear and thinks it's something. The whole idea is, something is bigger, and you have to look at the whole thing, because if you only touch part of it, you only get a small idea. So that's the other thing behind the title for elephants. But yeah, I've always kind of been interested in seeing the 1989 short film.
You already said the elephant in the room, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, as far as I know, the elephant in the room, this is, gun violence, school shootings, etc.
Knowing all of that, that's a great title for this film.
Yeah.
See, I never knew that.
Some thought was definitely put into it.
Yeah, I never understood the title.
Yeah. So there's certain people, that this isn't going to be for them. It's overly artsy.
Mm-hmm.
And and they'll just find it dull too. They're like, nothing happens till the end. It's like, why are we following these characters on these long shots and stuff? But again, if you're into this sort of thing, you can appreciate why it's doing when it's building up. It's creating realism. It's giving you a sense of like a real time and place and real people.
Well, it's only 81 minutes, so it's not
definitely a short movie. Yeah, I've actually, because I watched it yesterday and watched it today for the second time. So I did skip through some of those tracking shots for the second time just to watch it faster.
Right.
That wasn't because I was bored. It was just because, I have already absorbed this. I already know how it's going to go. But I mean, yeah. So it's a movie I would definitely recommend watching more than once. Because as we said, it gives you a better feel for the timeline and when the students, are intersecting, when their paths cross and stuff like that. Because by the time you've seen the whole movie, then when you watch it the first time, you can know to watch for some of those characters. Because sometimes they'll be in the background while the camera's following a different character, and it gives you a pretty good sense again of how much time goes by. Not very much at all.
By the way, you were right. The Virginia Tech is the number one.
Yeah.
Gosh, 31 people killed.
Yeah.
23 injuries, and then Sandy Hook is right after that. 28. Yeah. Good gosh.
And Sandy Hook, wasn't it like particularly young people? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like Sandy Hook's the one that really got people going.
20 first grade children aged 6 to 7.
Oh my God.
And
How old was that shooter?
20. He was 20 years old.
Jesus. So that's like a really different sort of school shooting, because those aren't his peers or anything, right? Those are younger kids. That's again just somebody thinking easy targets, multiple body count. Like,
I've heard some stuff about that shooting that doesn't actually line up, but I'm not gonna go off on a conspiracy theory. But
and there's a lot of conspiracy theories about Sandy Hook, which is really sad, because we've heard people like, can you imagine the worst thing that could ever happen to you happens? Like your child is murdered. And then on top of that, you have people like, accusing you of being a liar and talking about crisis act. I can't even imagine what it's like. For
yeah.
That must be like sheer hell. That must be sheer hell. The worst thing that could ever happen to you has already happened. And then instead of getting, sympathy and understanding, you have people viciously calling you a liar.
That was in 2012. It feels like it was sooner than that. Mm-hmm. Like, look how many we have that are like near the top. Parkland, Florida, it was 2018.
Yeah, that's the most recent sort of big one. Although obviously
Santa Fe, Texas,
just recently.
Santa Fe, Texas, in May of 18. Just last year. Good gosh.
Yeah.
2 of the big ones last year.
As I said, there's been so many, it's easy to forget some of them, and that's the other, like, this. It's not really discussed in this movie, but you can talk about it, like, in the years after, how it's almost starting to desensitize us, and we shouldn't be desensitized, but we're just there's an episode of South Park that sort of does that, where like everybody's so desensitized to the school shootings that they barely react anymore, and the cops seem to think every crime is a school shooting. Like at one point, somebody goes out and like shoots up like a restaurant, and they're like, "This is a really weird place for a school shooting." It's like, I don't get this one at all.
After that Red Lake, Minnesota, we finally have one that's from the 1700s.
Yeah. Actually, one of the most deadly ones is actually really early in the 20th century, where like some guy like bombed a schoolhouse.
Maybe
it's like from the 20s or something.
Oh, from the 1920s? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's the 1920s, and he only shot a couple people, but he like bombed like a schoolhouse, and it killed a bunch of people. So that for a long time that held the record, even though it was super old. He didn't even shoot anybody. Maybe it just was bombs. I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, if you did it right, you could easily kill a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's occurring to a lot of these people, and they're making plans and they're doing it. It's pretty horrific.
Yeah.
But I also like the movie because it just stays focused on the events. It's not about the aftermath. I mean, you can make a movie about the aftermath. That's fine, because that's important too. But it just has like one thing to do, and that's sort of just follow the day that it happens and show you some perspectives, and that's all it does. And it works really well. I mean, I'm a broken record, but the way they do it really reinforces, again, the realism. It feels very real.
I think if it did show some of the aftermath, it may lose some of the momentum, and maybe lose some of the purpose of the film, because it's not meant to show that. It's not meant to show the anguish of the loved ones after the fact. It's meant to show the act itself.
Yeah, and I don't think that sort of style would work taking on that sort of subject matter either. Like the style works because of what it's capturing. You'd have to make it very differently done to tackle that sort of thing. And like I said, that's sort of a movie in itself, I think. I mean, that's kind of not common, but it's a common enough sort of trope in drama, is you'll often have a movie that's about the aftermath of a tragedy.
Right.
Not necessarily a shooting, but, could be anything type thing.
I mean, we have enough real life footage of that part of it, that we don't really need to show that in film, I think.
Mm-hmm. Because it is true. I mean, this is just one small part, because these things, they affect people's, they go on. They affect people's lives throughout their lives, the people that survive, the people that lost loved ones and stuff, It does not end. And it must just really hurt, again, every time a new one happens.
There was a guy in the Columbine shooting. He got shot twice in the head, and he woke up like an hour later, and he was paralyzed. I think he actually did gain.
He dragged himself out.
Yeah, dragged himself out. But yeah, man, it's insane that he lived with a head wound like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're. And on that note, we'll see you next week. Maybe if we can get away from the bleakness for a minute.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, it's pretty damn bleak, but that is the point, because it's, again, sort of capturing kind of as close as it can, what it would really be like.
Yeah.
And Gus Van Sant has had an interesting career, because he started out with the more not experimental exactly, but indie type movies, and then he got away from them and did more mainstream stuff in the 90s, and then he circled around back to it. So I guess it shows that this is the kind of stuff he, I think, enjoys doing a little bit more. I can't talk about it exactly in the scope of the Death trilogy, but all three movies, of course, feature death in some way or another, in different ways. The third movie is about a suicide death, which is kind of interesting.
Michael Pitt's in that, and I like Michael Pitt quite a bit, so it's
And the first movie is like almost like a weird haphazard death. Like the guy kind of murders the other guy out of nowhere, and you have no idea why exactly. And you never really get to know. So you go from like sort of a haphazard out of nowhere death to, premeditated, carefully planned murder to a suicide. So, different aspects of death.
Yeah. It's something. I mean, you wonder, like, was this actually an intended trilogy? Because they're not really related films at all.
No. I've always been fascinated by thematic trilogies, ones that aren't, narratively connected. But we've talked a few times that John Carpenter's got like his weird apocalypse trilogy, which I really like a lot. Which would be what the Thing,
Prince of Darkness,
In the Mouth of Madness, which I really like. Argento's got his Three Mothers one. Of course, there's others that I can't think of.
Suspiria. What's the one in the middle? Tenebra?
No, it's Inferno?
Inferno, and then Mother of Tears.
Yeah. I still haven't seen Mother of Tears. I heard it's a bit of a letdown after the other two.
I mean, as far as modern day Argento goes, it's awesome.
Yeah. Since he's set the bar so fucking low.
Probably
I'm telling you, do not do the Dracula. Don't even do it out of curiosity, man. You'll just be sick. It's mind-boggling, because he's such a good filmmaker, that he could make something so poor, like really bad, like 1 star, half a star, really bad. Like I barely managed like 25 minutes of that movie. I
was like, maybe I can have a good time with it.
I don't think
so bad.
To me, I really don't think it falls into that category. You can try it, I guess, but to me, it does not fall into that category. It's just like awful.
Man, that's not happening.
Yeah. I don't know.
Like the Stendhal effect and like the card player, that stuff's terrible.
Giallo. I tried to watch Giallo.
Oh, yeah, Giallo was his, wasn't it? Yeah. With Adrian Brody.
Adrian Brody. Man, that's another one that I don't think I got through the whole thing. I think I quit at some point. So crappy. But yeah. But I've always had a thing for thematic trilogies. I'm not a filmmaker, but I think if I was a filmmaker, it would be something that I want to do. So, I'd be like, it'd be on my bucket list. It's like make a thematic trilogy of something, Maybe I'll do it with books. Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
But trying to think of movies he did recently. He did Milk, which isn't a bad movie.
I haven't seen Milk.
It's pretty much exactly what you expect it to be. Sean Penn's pretty good in it.
Yeah. Just like a political biopic type thing.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, it talks a bit about him being a gay man, of course, because that was a big part of it. And Gus Van Sant himself is gay, right?
Right.
So I assume he would have a decent perspective on it.
That's why it's a reoccurring theme in his films, I would imagine.
Sure, because I mean, why not? I mean, it's fun. It's funny. Like I think sometimes when straight people look at like gay people doing like movies that include homosexuality, we think they're an authority on the subject. Well, it doesn't really work that way, right? Like one gay person does not encompass the entire gay experience,
right.
But it's something. It's your experience, so you know something about it. So sure, why not?
He did,
So yeah, that's been in a few of his movies for sure.
He did Finding Forrester, which is really kind of
Another
like an Oscar grab type film. I don't think it's terrible, but it is
I get a
much
kick
more
out
of
of
a
it.
big budget. Yeah.
I only like it because it's about writing, and I like stuff about writing.
Yeah.
It's not particularly good, and I think that it kind of glosses over stuff. Like it doesn't. It's hard to do. This is something that I think about too when I watch stuff like okay, so I watched. This is songwriting, not writing, but okay. So I watched the Rocket Man movie, right? And it's a pretty good movie. I enjoyed it, but it let me down exactly where I expected it to. In that, like, and I realize why they do this because most audiences aren't really concerned with the creative process. They just aren't. And the creative process itself kind of, it's a slow, boring thing. It can be. And often, it takes repetition and revision. You don't just write a novel all in one go. You have to, like, plan it out. And you have to change things and make revisions and edit and stuff like that. And it's the same thing with songwriting. It can be like a start and stop thing. It can be a trial and error type thing. So there's a part where, like, a big pivotal moment where he hasn't broken through yet, but he's still, like, writing songs with Bertie Taupin, and he's at his parents' house and he's at the piano, and Taupin's been, like, staying with them, and he'll hand him sheets of lyrics and say, "See what you can do with this," and so he gives him the lyrics to Your Song. He basically sits down at the piano and bangs out Your Song and sings it completely perfectly the exact same way we hear it on the radio. And I'm sure a lot of people like that. And I realize that, again, it's taking creative license. They're not saying it actually happened that way, but they're just saying, and here's the song. But to me, that's not satisfying. I wanted it to at least sound a little different, for him to start and stop, and nothing. He just perfectly, in the exact same version you hear on the radio or on the CD or whatever. And to me, that's not satisfying. And I kind of feel the same way about things like Finding Forrester. We don't see him come up with ideas or think things or bounce things off. He's just a great writer with great talent, and it's not explained at all, and he can just do whatever. And stuff like that bothers me. Again, I realize this is a very difficult thing to put on film, and in the most realistic way possible. It's not filmable because it's boring and slow and long. Yeah. But there are shortcuts you can take to at least, I think, get the gist of it across. And these movies don't even attempt that, and that's what bothers me. Because honestly, a movie that I don't even like and I don't care about and I make fun of is 8 Mile. 8 Mile actually even tries to show him trying to develop somewhat as a rapper. Because there's a part that shows him, like, writing lyrics on the bus and stuff like that. And sometimes you'll hear songs on the soundtrack and they're only, like, halfway done or they're missing parts, and then they fill it in later. Like, they at least try that shortcut. And it works. Like, I don't think 8 Mile's very good, and I don't care about, Eminem's fictional character. And I'm not too interested in how hip-hop songs are written, but at least they make an effort to show kind of the genesis, how you have to piece things together, how you don't just, oh, it's done, And there's too much of that in a lot of these movies like Finding Forrester. But I understand the challenge because most audiences, they don't want to know the process. They don't care about the process.
That process is not thematic, is why. It's like you said, it's a long, boring, drawn-out process.
Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, at least do some sort of montage, because people do montages for, like, training for, like, boxing and sports.
It's just someone like writing and scribbling stuff out, and
I know, and I realize it doesn't work the same way again, but I at least appreciate that sort of effort.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But that's one of my favorite things. That's why I like it when there's things where creative people talk to each other, because they talk about their process and maybe how theirs is the same or how theirs is different. All that really interests me a lot, because it gives somebody like me hope too, because there's not one way to do it. It's okay that, when I read about how Neil Gaiman writes his books, that I don't do it that way, because it's not just one way. Everybody can do it a different way. And it's the type of thing that gives somebody like me hope. There are things tips and things you can pick up and say, oh, that's a good idea. But you don't have to just follow one formula. And I like that.
Right. You're the man now, dog.
Yeah, that's pretty much all that movie's remembered for.
That's what I remember. I mean, I did like the film, though. It's been quite a while since I've seen it. Just trying to check off Gus Van Sant's filmography. One film I do like, and it's one of his newer films, is Paranoid Park.
Still haven't seen that.
I'd recommend you check that out sometime if you get a chance.
Sure.
But he pretty much hasn't really done a lot lately, has he?
No.
I mean, after the post 2000,
Oh, it's worth pointing out also that Elephant won the top award. It won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival.
That's great.
So that's a pretty big deal. So again, it shows that like while it was kind of a risky film, maybe in a way to make because of the subject matter and because of the way it was made, like it, people recognize the quality right off, which is cool. It's not one of those movies that had to be appreciated later on, which happens with a lot of good movies, right? Where at the time people don't understand it or don't like it. And you can see why that could happen with this movie because Columbine was only a few years ago and we were right before school shootings were really going to pick up, actually. And maybe people were thinking, well, let's not talk about this. Then the movie comes out and it becomes an extremely timely thing, an extremely topical thing. Although, again, certain people aren't going to like it anyway because they're just like, well, what's the point? It doesn't really give us any insight. It's like, well, that's kind of is the point. Like, what insight can you get out of something that is so inexplicable? We're always going to look for answers for things, but we're never, when it comes to something as horrible as just like premeditated murder of just random people for undefined reasons, we're never going to get satisfying explanations and answers. And this movie's, not going to try that. So it's going to say, okay, instead we're just going to sort of show you kind of what it can be like in one instance. And I think it's really effective in the way it pulls that off.
And there's not really a lot of, reason given.
No.
Looking for a reason. So it's, why did this happen?
As I said, they point out a few things that are possibilities, but none of them are necessarily hammered home. He's playing a violent video game. This guy, he tells the principal that they got bullied. Some people threw some stuff at him in class. They're watching a thing about Hitler. Some things are brought up, but, none of it's hammered home saying, here's your definite cause. Because that's how it usually happens with these things, I think. There is not necessarily one definite cause. You take somebody that already has all sorts of psychological issues anyway, and then it's a melange of various things.
The Columbine shooters, did they have a Hitler tie? Was there any of that? Or you may have mentioned that earlier.
I can't remember. I think they looked at stuff like that, but so do a lot of people.
I mean, so do I. I mean,
I know. And as I said, I think a lot of these shooters that have looked at Nazi and Hitler stuff, it's not necessarily a Nazi ideology. It's more the admiration for the fact that the Nazis were so efficient at extermination. I really think it's that. It's just more that. It has less to do with exterminating a particular race or any sort of ideology regarding that. It's just like, look how well they did, and they find that admirable,
I mean, there are some days if people looked at my search history, they would probably put me as some sort of psychopath. But
right,
I just have like a morbid curiosity about things.
Same here, especially not so much shooters, but the more the classic serial killer. I'm so into that.
Yeah,
I'm so into that. And these are some of the sickest bastards in the world. These are people that are raping people and killing little kids and having sex with corpses and stuff. And I'm reading all that.
You're not like taking notes on how to do it.
Yeah, no. I promise, FBI and people watching. No.
Well, I mean, there's an entire channel devoted to that here in the U.S., the Investigation Discovery Channel. That's all they show. So, I mean, it's obviously a common thing to have, an obsession with.
Again, another South Park episode of that. Informative murder porn.
Yeah. That's exactly it, man. That's like me and my wife. That's the kind of stuff we like to watch, my wife and I. Yeah.
She's finding out ideas for how to kill you.
Yeah, you would think so. Yeah. She can never pull it off.
She doesn't have the skills.
There's a whole show about that. I killed my spouse, or women that kill. There's a few, I guess.
Yeah, a bunch. Yeah. Every once in a while, I get a free preview of that channel, and it's just all that stuff.
There's some decent stuff. The problem is they usually pad out like a 15-minute episode into like a 30-minute or an hour long.
Yeah.
It's like, you're just like recapping the same shit you've told.
And some of them are really cut and dry, right? Yeah. It's like some woman is cheating on her husband, so she gets her lover to like shoot her husband. It's like, okay. Like there's not like some big web of deception or some, big conspiracy or all the, it's just,
yeah.
I need you to get rid of my husband. Okay, baby, I love you. Bang. Oh, look, we got caught instantly because we're idiots.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too. Like the other thing, the thing I'm most fascinated with is, again, which ties into the school shootings, is like underage people that kill.
Right.
A lot of that. like Kids Who Kill is a show.
Yep.
I'm sure you've seen it. I used to watch a lot of that. Yeah, I watch a lot of that. And there's different sorts of killings, right? You have school shooters, sure, but there's also like the thrill killers. It'll just like roam in groups trying to kill whoever they find and stuff like that. That's what's really disturbing to me. It's like the big group mentality where you get like 5 or 6 kids. They're like, yeah, let's just go fucking murder somebody. That terrifies the hell out of me.
And there's always one that's weak that confesses to everything.
Yeah. And then again, because actually a few years ago, we had not killings, but we had some swarmings here where like high school kids would like beat up people like roaming the streets.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. There's a good show on that channel. It's called the 80s, The Most Violent Decade. I think there's 2 or 3 seasons of that.
I haven't heard of that one.
And then they've done 90s, The Most Violent Decade now. I haven't seen that one yet, but it's cool stuff that I haven't ever heard of before, like more unknown killings. And, just random stuff. But that's a good example of a show that could probably be 30 minutes, but they pad it out to be an hour, with commercials.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of recapping.
Yeah. Isn't that so annoying? Especially if you're watching something it's streaming and there's no commercials, but they're like, we'll be right back. And then they come back and then they recap some stuff. It's like, I know. There's no commercial. I'm streaming.
It's like a paper from high school. It's like, first, we're going to tell you what we're going to show you. We're going to show you what we're going to show you. Then we're going to show you a little bit of it. Then we're going to recap what we just showed you. Now we're going to recap what's coming after the commercial.
Interesting enough, I'm looking at his filmography here. And besides it showing it's gross, it shows the Rotten Tomatoes score. And Elephant has a 73, which seems pretty solid, but Good Will Hunting has a 97. Like, I like Good Will Hunting a lot too. Drugstore Cowboy's got a 100.
Wow.
Like, I thought Drugstore Cowboy was a pretty good movie, and I'm glad we covered it, but I didn't think it was amazing.
It's probably just because it's old.
Yeah. But,
well, didn't Black Panther have a 100 for the longest time? It may still have.
Oh, yeah, I know. That's like a really weird outlier to me. But, yeah, My Own Private Idaho. That's a cool movie. I forgot that we did that, but now I'm remembering. Yeah, that's the one with all the cool Shakespeare stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool movie. And plus, I'm a big River Phoenix fan.
Yeah. He directed a documentary about River.
Yeah, I saw it.
Oh, you saw it? Okay.
Yeah. Focused a bit too much on River's like wanting to do his music career, but it's still good.
I saw the Netflix whatever they were. Well, it was all about people that died too young.
Yeah, I saw that one too.
Forget whatever it was called, but I saw the one on him. But I haven't seen the documentary.
They both have a lot of overlap.
There's a lot of that, musical stuff in there. I remember.
Not that I mind too much, but yeah. But yeah, I mean, if he'd lived, it was suggested like he was going to move away from acting and really try to like be a musician.
That reminds me of Corey Feldman. Like, would he be like Corey Feldman now? Like, just trying to be a musician so hard?
I don't think so. And he was a much better actor than Corey Feldman, let's be honest. Way better. Like, and this was a guy, and again, Corey Feldman was one of those, kid actors sort of stuck in that. He was like a goofy looking kid. But he didn't grow up to anything. River Phoenix, we already knew was going to be a full on leading man, his looks and his build and everything. He would have been like a Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt for sure, I think. If he, wanted to be.
He'd be like a Jerry McConnell.
Yeah.
I'm just going to name all the Stand By Me characters.
I love Stand By Me. We did that on the show, too. So if anybody's interested in Stand By Me, we did that.
Who was the other guy? Will Wheaton?
Will Wheaton.
Okay. I was thinking Will Wheaton was too young to be in that movie, but I guess he just looked young.
Yeah. He was like me. I look young now. I looked young as a kid, too. I was always a bit smaller and younger and had a high voice.
What's he doing? Wesley Crusher was many moons ago, yeah.
I don't know. He kind of had a bit of a resurgence because he had a reoccurring role on The Big Bang Theory as himself. So I think that got his name out there and into some things again.
Showed younger people who he actually is.
Yeah, I think so. Seems like a nice guy. I don't know. It's not I know for sure. I was never a Star Trek fan, so I didn't make the connection for many years to Stand By Me because it's not something I used to keep track of when I was younger.
Will with one L, Okay.
Yeah. Will Wheaton.
Oh, he was in Toy Soldiers. That's one I need to revisit.
I barely remember that movie. Is Sean Astin in that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I saw that once, like right when it maybe came out on video, and I can barely remember. But that's cool because that's like not a school shooting, isn't it? Like gunmen attack a school or something.
Is it like China or the Russians or something?
I don't know. Maybe.
Well, it's some sort of communist attack at school.
I can't remember what they are, but yeah, maybe it's more like a more localized. What's that 80s movie I hate so much? Red Dawn. It's like a smaller scale Red Dawn, maybe. Fuck, I hate Red Dawn. Sorry. I know people are like, oh, it's so cool. And I realize it's, you shouldn't pick and choose what movies to, like, come down hard on for suspension of disbelief, but my suspension of disbelief does not work for that movie. A bunch of, like, high school students doing guerrilla warfare against the Soviet army, like, no.
I just like how they remade it, and they weren't Chinese after all.
They had to change it to the Koreans so they wouldn't upset the Chinese or something.
Mm-hmm.
Liam Hemsworth in that?
Yeah.
I saw a bit of it. I didn't see the whole thing.
Or one of the Hemsworths. I get them all confused.
Oh, yeah. Liam, Chris. I don't know. Chris is the main one. Chris is the main one. He's Thor.
Yeah. One of them was married to Miley Cyrus, or still is.
Or they just broke up now. I think I saw that on Twitter like yesterday. Like I don't like that I know that, but that's what Twitter can do for you sometimes.
Whatever the young one's name.
I don't like Miley Cyrus at all. She seems stupid.
Yeah, I won't disagree.
I think she's another one of those people that's been completely warped by fame. Like, because her dad was famous, so she just always grew up in it. She was a Disney Channel person, and then she wanted to really, and she's like the ultimate example. One of those Disney people really trying to distance yourself from it, right?
No, totally.
She's like, oh, my hair is weird, and I go, yeah, and I smoke pot. And
I smoke weed.
I'm like, you're trying so hard to say you're cool and edgy, and like, fuck off. I get it. Like, nobody wants to be pigeonholed as Hannah Montana for their life. I understand that, and I respect that. But you just went way too far. Like, just trying so hard.
My kid's been watching a lot of the newer that type of show, whatever you call it, like a soap opera for children or whatever. But soap opera for older children.
Tween stuff.
Tweens, I hate that term, but they really hold those people down to a contract, they sign like 10-year contracts with these people that are really talented. Like all the girls, they can sing and act pretty well, which is impressive to be able to, are good at both.
Yeah.
So they've got their live action show and they also do a lot of music, but now that Disney's bought Marvel, they're bringing them over into some of the Marvel shows, doing a lot of the voices and stuff. So it's like you could do all kinds of stuff as long as it's under the Disney umbrella. It's kind of crazy.
I could live with it, I suppose. It would be a bad life. But I can understand getting frustrated with it at the same time, wanting to branch and be known for other things.
Yeah.
So how could it be creatively stifling?
You sign a contract when you're like, 14 and you're like a 26-year-old woman, like still doing like Disney movies.
Oh yeah, I started to watch Paranoid Park and something stopped me. It wasn't the movie. I think I don't know. I had to go do something or something interrupted me because I can remember specifically putting on Paranoid Park to watch and then like I didn't or something, or I watched like 5 minutes and then I had to stop. So yeah, I would like to see it because I looking at the poster and the setup. Yeah, it's like I saw like the first few minutes of that.
It's a lot like some of his other films that just. It just follows that kid around his life pretty much.
Sure.
It's, not really a whole lot goes on. It's just a well told story. I don't know what Orc is talking about here.
What? You're asking a question, Orc?
Ask Cole or your Uber Noob Viewers Choice Awards.
What are we giving awards to? What? Like best something? I need more, Orc.
What do you want me to ask, Orc? No.
I love sifting through Orc's comments. It's so enlightening.
Read the chat. This? You want that, Orc?
Yay or nay?
okay to show the girls.
Yeah, yay, sure. Tats and piercings can be good. I mean, sure, anything can be done wrong, but Suicide Girls, right? You ever see that shit? They look pretty good.
I'm very pro that. Yeah, I like all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, remind me to ask you something when we get off air here.
Okay. I see that Gus Van Sant's newest movie is that interesting titled "Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot" comedy. It has Joaquin Phoenix in it, actually. Oh, look, Jonah Hill and Jack Black are in it together.
Wow.
That seems interesting. A movie that contains both of them. An alcoholic cartoonist meets at a party, drunk driving, car accident. Yeah, it sounds pretty loopy. Rooney Mara's in there, too. That sounds like something I'd be interested in. Sounds like a wacky sort of thing. Speaking of wacky, he did do the movie adaptation of the novel Even Cowgirls Get the Blues.
Yeah. With
Uma Thurman, I think. Which is a really weird, wacky movie book written by a particularly sort of quirky writer. I always forget his name. But he wrote a lot of quirky novels that I read a handful of because my roommate was really into him, which I thought was odd because his novels to me, not that because again, I'm super open-minded. I think, and I read everything. I always say, it doesn't matter to me what the intended audience is. I'll read everything. But I always thought his novels were sort of kind of, even though he's a male writer, were sort of intended for women, the way they were written. Can't think of his name.
I've seen it. I remember it being really weird.
Yeah, all his stuff is. Tom Robbins. Tom Robbins is the novelist. I remember he wrote a really weird novel called Half Asleep in Frog Pajamas that I liked a lot, which is just, again, which doesn't really have much of a plot. It's just a bunch of quirky, weird shit. Like, there's a guy and he's got a girlfriend, but he has like a pet monkey, and there's all sorts of weirdness going on in it. But yeah, Tom Robbins. He's an interesting writer. But as far as I know, Even Cowgirls Get the Blues is his only novel to get like a major movie based on it. And it seems fitting that Gus Van Sant seems like the right sort of guy to tackle that sort of subject matter. And Keanu Reeves is in there too. And another Phoenix, Rain Phoenix. So the Phoenixes seem to have some sort of attachment to this. Joaquin, Rain. I saw Summer the other day because I caught the last few minutes of one of Orc's favorite movies, The Faculty. Summer Phoenix is in that. She has a small role. So the Phoenix clan.
Is Rain the one married to Casey Affleck?
I think Summer is.
Oh, Summer is, okay. So that's
of course,
another
Of course, Joaquin used to be named Leaf and changed it because he wanted to be different. He wanted to be outside of the theme.
I really don't blame him.
Oh, Crispin Glover's in that movie too.
That's perfect.
Sean Young. Yeah, I'm gonna watch some of these movies again because I don't remember them very well. But I know people. We're not usually that well organized. So we can't tell people what we're doing next, but we do have a couple movies on the horizon we can give you a heads up on. I think the next movie we're going to do is we've talked about various flops and stuff because we always like analyzing flops. And one of the ones we did for Spielberg, even though it's a different sort of flop, was we did an episode on AI, which we enjoyed a lot. But one of his earliest things is 1941, his weird World War II comedy. I think we're going to do that next because I'm really looking forward to doing that. And then what was the one after that? Something more serious.
My phone just went dead. I could have told you. I wrote them all down. Damn it!
Oh, City of God. I think we're gonna. I think we're gonna do the City of God, the movie about the Brazilian guys, which I'm super excited because I haven't seen that in like a decade. I remember watching that movie and being floored by how good it was, and then like never watching it again. So I'm super looking forward to watching the movie because I know it's a really good movie. So I think those are our next two movies, probably in that order. So I want to be able to give you a heads up. So hopefully we'll really get some, now that we've been off for a while, get some continuity going and some consistency and be back in consecutive weeks, hopefully. I've been a bit sick, but that's clearing up now. I'm about 80% better, I think. I had a cold. It wasn't a big deal, you know. I always brag that I never get colds, so finally I guess I was due. I got a cold. And it wasn't too bad. I had a bit of cough, but then like a few days ago, it like morphed into an ear infection, which was really painful. I had to go to the emergency room and stuff. I got stuff, and my ear hasn't hurt, but for the last few days, it still feels plugged, which is super annoying. So if I've been talking really loudly, guys, that's probably partly why, because I can't hear completely well out of my left ear, which is just drive me insane. Jay, I'm sure, remembers well the Seinfeld episode where Kramer gets like water in his ear and it's driving him insane. That's kind of how I've been feeling the last few days, where I just want to go stuff. But I'm sure by next week I'll be completely better. But yeah, it's been a bit annoying, just how the summer cold just sort of hangs on.
Yeah.
I was worried that I might cough through this episode because even though I didn't cough much today, I didn't cough much yesterday until I went to bed. I got in bed and I coughed so much I could barely hold on to my book. So I was worried that, like, okay, I barely coughed today, but as soon as I get on air, I'm probably going to hack and cough through the whole thing. But that hasn't really happened, so that's good. So I'm certainly glad about that. But yeah, so we're looking, 1941 and City of God, I think, are going to be up next. And then as we get into September, as we usually do going towards Halloween, we might do some horror or darker, twisted stuff. And we have some ideas about that. We won't share that just yet. But so we have taken some time off, but at least we do have a plan, people. So yeah. And it's been a bit of a transition to switching formats. Google Hangouts is gone. We're doing this StreamYard thing.
Coming to you next week from the yard.
Yeah, we'll have all our StreamYard swag on with the duck, which we know everybody really likes.
Oh, yeah, we love the duck. Yeah,
we love the duck. It's the best thing. So maybe we'll continue with this, or maybe we'll find something else. We're not sure. But also, unrelated to this, I'm hoping we can do a really special live commentary maybe on the weekend, because I got really excited about a movie. I'm not going to say that we'd love to do, so we'll see if that's possible or not, because I really, really want to do it. Maybe get a couple friends on to do it with us, because I think it would be really fun. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, this one doesn't have particularly long. Any sort of final sort of summing up thoughts on Elephants?
I just really think it's well done to tell the story it wants to tell. It's just the perfect way to, give us the simple breakdown of, the events that happened. And right. I love all the Steadicam stuff. It works so well. Yeah,
I think so too. It's a really great approach for creating an atmosphere of realism, for showing just sort of the stark horror of such a thing, but also sort of the banality of it. It's not cinematic or necessarily dramatic or fast-paced or anything. It's very much kind of how these things do play out in real life, sadly. How abrupt and horrifying it can be, the way the violence is, and how you're not really provided with a lot of answers. The movie had, even with the approach the movie took, there were several different sort of options for how it could have ended, and the movie doesn't let go. It gives you a very sort of chilling ending by not ending with both the killers taken out or the police response or anything. One of the killers is still active and probably still going to claim some more victims before all said and done, and that's how the movie decides to leave us, which is a very interesting and bold choice that I think works. The movie is bookended by shots of the sky, which you can say is artsy, but it's effective because it gives you sort of a contemplative. This is a contemplative movie. It deals with a lot of real world issues. It doesn't give us answers, but it just gives you some stuff to think about. And Jay and I have touched on it a little bit. We didn't want to get too deep into it or be too political or controversial on it. Although again, it's sad. It's sort of a sad mark of the times we live in, that when we're talking about gun violence, we have to talk about how it might have a political bent, because so much of it to me seems like common sense, but people have different ideas, and it's a whole quagmire you can get into, sadly. But yeah, as you said, it's just very effective for what the movie's trying to do, because the movie is not trying to do too much. It has sort of a clear goal. It's a complicated issue done sort of in a simple way, and I think it's pulled off very effectively. Like you said, the long shots, the Steadicam, the way that the perspective sort of meanders around, almost like you're just sort of a casual observer to the events. The lack of backstory with the characters. We're just introduced to them. We follow them around for a while. Yeah, so just leaving so much stuff up in the air, so much stuff to contemplate. It's very, very cerebral movie for contemplation. I don't think it in any way glamorizes this sort of thing. I think it just gives us a very stark portrayal of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't seen the full Death trilogy yet, but I mean, I like, as I said, I kind of like stylistic, thematic trilogies, so it's kind of cool that it ties into a different one with two very different movies about very different aspects of death and ways. It's cool. And yeah, it's a cool movie for Gus Van Sant to do, again, sort of returning to his more indie style roots with this movie after a few years of doing the more big budget Hollywood kind of fare. Not that they were bad. Finding Forrester is an okay movie. I really do like Good Will Hunting. I've said this before a few times about sort of the delayed effect. Good Will Hunting's like the ultimate example to me of me hearing about a movie, being super hyped, not seeing it, figuring there's no way it lives up to the hype, and actually almost kind of forming a negative opinion about it before finally seeing it. Finally seeing it, being like, oh yeah, it is really good. That's kind of like one of the best examples of that for me. Because I can remember at one point, like actually being kind of annoyed by the movie's success and how much people were talking about it. And then when I finally saw it, I was like, okay, yeah, I kind of get it now, because I really do like the movie. I mean, it's not a perfect movie. I wouldn't say it's exactly a super classic, but it's a good movie. Certainly a really great movie to remember Robin Williams by. Nice performance by him. And
yeah, I don't think I watched it again until Robin Williams passed away. It still holds up.
It holds up. So it shows sort of some versatility on Gus Van Sant's part, and that he can do more than just sort of these indie type movies. He can do a bigger scale type movie with some big name actors and stuff. So yeah, I think I want to see his latest movie next. It seems like it might be a sort of a quirky type of comedy. Sounds kind of cool. So I'm not sure to check that out. But that was Elephant, and that is the return of the Pocket Dimension, and hopefully we'll be going forward with some consistency now as we ride out the rest of the summer. So I know we've been off for a while, so we thank anybody that's come back to us, because we know we've been away for a while, and there's all sorts of other things and distractions and things for your attention. So anybody that's happy that we're back, we're very happy to be back, and we're happy to see you. So thanks a lot, guys. And as always, let us know what you think about this movie and Gus Van Sant, his career and filmography in general. We always like talking about that stuff. So thanks so much. That's going to do it for this episode.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Peace out. StreamYard, yo.